Thank you, Eddie. Please go ahead.
All righty then, let's start the meeting today. Please take the roll call, Sebastian.
Okay, and my apologies if you hear cats fighting in the background. Don't know what's going on with them. David Harris.
Present.
Gary Johns.
Present.
Carolyn Schofield.
Present.
Matthew Vasilakis.
Present.
Tom Summers.
Present.
Taylor Lopez.
Here.
Secretary Webb.
Here.
Vice Chair Hammond.
Here.
And Chair Price.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Are there any public comments not on the agenda?
We do have some submitted public comments on item number 6, but none on the agenda. So you may proceed, Chair.
Okay, are there any items to be withdrawn or reordered on the agenda?
Yes. I would request that item number 6 be withdrawn.
Okay. And I don't know what to do now. Is there any particular reason why?
Yes, we discussed this item at our last meeting under the item regarding board agenda items, and you attended, Chair Price, you attended the board meeting on November 18th and brought our concerns and questions to the board. Specifically, you asked the board if a CAC member will be on the committee. You asked the board for a timeline regarding the hiring of the new CEO. And you asked the board to amend the JPA to allow internal candidates to apply. And the board responded with answers to 2 of those questions and had their attorney brief on the 3rd question. So based on that, I don't believe that there's anything additional that the CAC can do on this issue. It's been brought to the board's attention.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments?
Matt has his hand raised and I'll jump in the queue after him.
Matt?
Thank you. I'm going to start off by saying that I disagree with this request. We are here to have conversations and share community priorities. I feel like this request undermines that duty. I've heard from various San Diegans who I represent as a CAC member and listened to many public comments during board meetings this year about this issue, about concerns over lack of transparency, accusations of sexism and unfairness. I'm not saying that any of those perspectives are true or false, but it's clearly become a concern for the community, which is why I support having item 6 on the agenda. And please know, I respect the board and the position that they're in, their leadership, but we as a community advisory committee members, we have to remember 2 very essential facts. 1, we're here on behalf of our communities, not the board directors who appointed us. And 2, the board has their own political agenda that we're not privy to, which means we cannot, on any issue, simply accept what they have to say as fact. So I would appreciate it if this request was withdrawn so we can respect the CAC and community members who wish to have an open, public, and transparent conversation about what is going on with regards to this issue. I do not want this body to stifle any public discourse, open government, or create any perception that SDCP CAC is unwilling to engage in difficult and uncomfortable conversations. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Tara, did you have you got your hand up.
I echo Matt's sentiment, and I'm not sure our formal process here but would either oppose that recommendation or request that David reconsider it, but I'll defer to Sebastian on our procedure here since I don't think we've had this come up before. But I think it's important to keep this on the table and to continue asking important questions and having better communication and transparency throughout the process.
And I wholeheartedly agree with both your assessments of the situation, personally. Any other board members have anything to say? I mean, committee members? Ed?
Yes, I do apologize to begin with. I think I cut out while comments were being made. Can you then state where are we procedurally with regard to this matter?
I believe since I've never really experienced anything like this. I believe either Mr. Harris will rescind his request or we vote on it. Matthew, or if there's a lawyer on the line, they can tell me whether or not that's right or wrong.
Well, since there are 3 members of this committee that want to have this item discussed, I will withdraw my request to withdraw this item.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, because I sure didn't know what to do. So thank you very much. Ed, do you have anything else?
That would be it. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay. With that, any other board committee members have anything to add? Okay, well, let's move on to number 5. Provide input to Alliance resources.
Sebastian, can I make a request that if it's not too far off procedure, to hide the what do I want to say, the slide that's on screen now so I can see everybody? Right now it's teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me put you in speaker view. So, okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Krebs. I'm with Alliance Resource Consulting, and I am the latest person who's been asked to help with the CEO recruitment for San Diego Community Power. Actually under contract to do that now, and as part of that process, I've been asked to reach out, talk with all of you today, and I do want to let you know that I'll be available after today too, to continue to listen to you, receive information and feedback from you about the process. I was hired to make this a fair and transparent process, to make sure that it was, and I'm committed to doing that. I will describe the process for you really quickly, and then I get to the matter that's really the key focus today. But my firm specializes in public sector recruitments. I have helped 3 other CACs in California fulfill some staffing requirements. So I have a little bit of experience with that generally. More specifically, a lot of experience with public utilities in the state of California. My background before I became a recruiter was I worked in public agencies and with private consulting firms that focused on key community issues, land use, transportation, air quality, water quality, those types of things. So by training, by education, we know these issues pretty well too. I am, my major, one of them in college was communications, and I spent a lot of years doing government and community outreach. So I understand the importance of the type of role you have. I understand how important it is that you, as the point people for the communities that you represent, are doing your very best to be good representatives and to carry information both ways. So again, I want to be here to help you be successful in your roles. What we're going to do with the recruitment process today, we're going to talk about key things that you're interested in this next CEO bringing to the job, and that's both in terms of experience and then their personal traits and attributes. Listening to a lot of other people, I'm talking to board members, I talked to staff today, talking to the IBEW, some of their leadership, hopefully tomorrow, trying to get a whole bunch of conversations in before I draft the recruitment profile. I'm aiming to do that next Monday and hoping that we'll be launching this recruitment next week. I am working with an ad hoc committee of the San Diego Community Power. They're my key contacts. throughout the process, but we're going to try to bring as many people into the boat and keep them there as we can, definitely on the listening portion of this. After the recruitment profile is ready, I send it out to folks. We will be doing targeted research for people who fit what I'm hearing from everybody. We'll send them invitations. They get those via email. They get copies of the profile. We follow up with phone calls. There will be a lot of outreach to potential candidates for this position. Individuals who either have the experience, have the skills, have the local community connections, and are known and trusted. We'll be reaching out to them, trying to convince them to apply for the position. About 30 days after we've launched it, we will have an application deadline. I will conduct screening interviews with the people who seem best qualified, and then take out of the, hypothetically speaking, I'm going to say 30 people apply. That might be really low, but I'm going to say 30 people apply. I'm going to take to the ad hoc committee, after talking with individuals, a smaller set of these seem to be the best qualified individuals. We'll talk about those. And my goal at that point will be for them to say, okay, let's move these individuals forward to interviews. When I say I'll take them a shorter list to them, I'll present the full list of everybody who applied to them. And if they're like, we think you're off base, there's somebody else that we want to include in the process, we'll do that. But I am hoping that the process will be well enough shared, communicated, and of high enough interest that we'll get a lot of really good candidates in that 30, 40 day window application period. Ad hoc committee will choose the individuals who will be interviewed for the position. We're still working out what happens next and who's involved in that. Now I need to have some conversations with them around that. But there will be transparency in the process as we move through. I'll be giving them updates weekly, and I'm going to ask that those they make those available to others. They're very high level, but it'll be we advertised in these places. We have received this many applications. We are screening this many individuals. So there'll be, a public record for what's happening with the process. We don't release candidates' names. As I'm sure most, if not all of you can appreciate, we don't want to jeopardize anybody's current jobs. So we don't release the candidates' names, but we will be keeping the process as open and transparent as possible without sharing that level of detail. End of the day, we're trying to have somebody on board within about 4 months to take this position, provide that long-term guidance and stability that the organization and all of you who are working with it, I have heard really need. So that's in a nutshell where we're going, what the plan is. There's more detail. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about process right now before I start asking you questions.
Yeah, I have one question. Why are you consulting with or talking to or speaking with IBEW? And you haven't talked to us first, right?
I haven't talked to them first. Yeah. So my job is to be inclusive. And that means I'm listening to a lot of different voices.
IBEW is not part of the leadership of San Diego Community Power. They're part of the community. We represent the community. If IBEW, and this is my humble opinion, if IBEW wants to have conversation in any of these matters, they need to come through the Community Advisory Committee because they are part of the community. They're not a inserted element of leadership in San Diego Community Power, but that's just my humble opinion. But it just irks me that this is the second or third time we've received information that the IBEW has received first, or their name has been put into this. This is not San Diego Community Power and IBEW. This is San Diego Community Power. And that when somebody else is inserted into this, that doesn't lend itself towards accountability or transparency. So I just had that question. And I'm sorry if I'm sounding offended or offensive to you. It's not your fault. You know what I mean? It's just a thing that we go through.
Yeah, I understand it. And I'll answer your question. I was asked to include them, and other people as stakeholders in the community by members of the board. So I'm going to, they're the people who I'm under contract to. So I'm going to follow through on that. They won't carry any more weight than anybody else in this process. I'm listening to lots of folks, and your opinions really matter in a significant way. So I'll go to the next question.
Charles? I mean, Tom. Tom, you really need to change your name to Tom.
Oh, yeah. I'm a split personality. Listen, I wonder if we could get a brief synopsis of some of the bumps that we've hit along the road in this process before we get started with our presentation, just to bring us up to speed, maybe from Sebastian or one of my colleagues. Briefly, I know this is going to be a long meeting, but is that okay?
It's okay with me. I don't know who you're asking, but yeah, sure. I've heard a little bit. I'd like to hear more.
Sebastian?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I know that this has been a long process, and I was wondering if we could have a brief synopsis of why it has taken so long and why we're still trying to get a permanent CEO.
Hey, Tom, those are great questions. I think the answers don't lie with me or with staff. I think they lie with the ad hoc CEO search committee. And I'd probably look to Cindy to report those questions that you're asking to the ad hoc committee, but I do not have that information.
Okay, well, that's good enough, I guess. Thanks.
I would say I'm interested in learning about, we've asked if a CAC member can be part of the process, and if you've discussed that with the ad hoc committee, and if you have feedback or any updates for us. That's something the last few months, but we've been interested in learning about.
Yeah, I haven't had a formal meeting with the ad hoc committee yet, but I will carry that forward as something that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Ed?
Sort of along the lines and just trying to understand the issue, so to speak, or at least considerations related to this agenda item and perhaps others. At the beginning, it may have been David or somebody else mentioned that at the last board meeting, a CAC representative forwarded on questions and there were replies by the board. Could those be re-summarized, rehashed if it won't take too long?
Well, why don't we defer that to the next item? Because I think that's relevant to the next item, not this one.
Okay.
Matthew?
Yes, I just wanted to provide some feedback, and thank you first to the Alliance team. I really appreciate your role in finding a long-term leader for SDCP. There's a great team being built today, and it's just exciting to chart a path forward. Thank you for laying out the process, and I have some prepared remarks, just wanted to get through them to make sure we captured everything. So first and foremost, I agree we need a robust nationwide search for a CEO that can lead our organization and meet the community's expectations. And to start, I'm going to just provide a bit of context in terms of, for you all, SDCP is our region's only hope for meeting its member cities' legally binding clean electricity goals. So clean, cost-effective electricity is the foundation for all climate and decarbonization policy. Without SDCP, we'll never be able to decarbonize our electric grid, advance equity, or create good middle-class jobs. So through that, the community spent 5 years fighting to create this program, which we're very excited to see take on and have permanent leadership that can navigate. What we're hoping is for leadership to come into SDCP that, one, recognizes what the impetus was for establishing the organization. 2, understands what's at stake for our communities if STCP is not successful. And 3, is aligned with the values of the organization and the community that helped establishment. So we are rooted and centered in community, not the old school backroom deal, CPUC, SDG style energy world. That is the past. STCP must be the future. So whether it's in transparency, innovation, equity, or sustainability, we must have a leader that reflects the community that fought for half a decade to bring us all together in this privileged space. So I'm not personally interested in seeing the installation of like a senior investor-owned utility executive or an LAWP manager. And I'll also warn that just because candidates may come from a CCE program does not mean that they will be respectful or accepting of the community struggle and vision for STCP. So, we're just really hoping that we can find someone who understands that this is not just about electricity or electrons. This is about a fundamental shift in our economy and way of life. And STCP must be the answer that the community called for. So we're really hoping we can recruit someone and that the board subcommittee will understand and be committed to this reality. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, your hand is still up. Do you have another question or comment, sir?
No, apologize for that. With this screen, I'm trying to figure out. There we go.
Okay. So anything else, Ms. Krebs?
The key thing that I wanted to do today is hear from you again, what it is you think San Diego Community Power needs in its next CEO. And again, that is education and experience. It is personality, for lack of a better term. And by personality, I mean how they represent the organization, how they interact with the people at the CIC, with other people in the community. So, really that leadership style, those tangible qualities that speak leader.
Yeah, I think Matthew eloquently summarized where we're at with this. Kara?
I don't have a nice prepared statement like Matthew, but I do have some bullets I'm happy to share. I think I agree, nationwide search is great. Someone local that understands our local dynamics, I think would be very beneficial. Someone that prioritizes climate and JEDI is very important. And I'd like to see someone that believes in local rooftop solar energy storage and prioritizing communities of concern for our projects. Preferably, I'd recommend no ties to SDG&E or Sempra and isn't affiliated with an investor in utility or public utility. And then I guess leadership style, someone who is going to communicate value input from the community whose values are aligned. I'd love to see a woman take the lead here. Energy is a very male dominated space. But yeah, we're excited for the search and we've been eager to find a permanent CEO for this organization. So thanks for all of your time and for being here today asking for our input.
Thank you.
David?
Yes, I just wanted to add a few things. Since SDCP has only been launched for a year and a half, and we're expected to grow exponentially over the next couple of years, we really need a leader who has experience in a startup organization, is somebody who understands risk, involved in a startup organization, and is prepared to grow the organization in the direction that has been set by the board and the community advisory committee.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tom?
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate what Matthew and Tara said, and David as well. The only thing that I would add when Matthew was listing the unacceptable types was union cronies. And I say that as I draw a union pension. I've been a unionist all my life, but we've seen how that can backfire with us. So I just wanted to, and you said it yourself, but we don't need to be victims of the same type of subterfuge that one particular union pulled on us earlier, and I have no doubt that they will try to do it again. And you know what I'm talking about in regards to rooftop solar. It absolutely has to be someone who is not beholden to special interests. Then that includes labor unions, as well as all of the other usual suspects. Thanks.
David? Okay,
Yeah,
David.
Thanks, Eddie. I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Anna, Carolyn, anything?
For me, I'm looking at familiarity with communities and educational aspects, because as I look going forward at reaching out to communities about resources available through San Diego Community Power, it's really challenging reaching out to communities, and it's really challenging to reach out to the people that actually need the knowledge and the assistance the most. And so someone that really has an eye out for that. And then the other thing is really knowing what resources are available, because you have to be able to match up the resources with the people. And I think that that's a place where things fall through the cracks. So, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate what my associates here have spoken about. I would also feel better if it is somebody who's at least familiar with the state of California or the region. We could do a nationwide search, but I came from the residential telephone long distance, industry and IT. And I've seen so many CEOs be brought in who just gut it and want to make themselves look good with the bottom line. So I think that particularly we should vet, that they don't just jump off from company to company just to build their resume.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyone else? I would say something, but everything has already been said. So I guess we can move on. Do you have enough information? Well, we can move on to item number 6.
I believe I do. And again, I'm going to see if this is, nope, I will find a way to get my communication details to you. So if you want to follow up one-on-one anytime, you can do that. I'll share email and phone number with you. Really appreciate you all coming in so well prepared today too. This went quickly.
Chair Price, I see Matthew has his hand raised, and I had one more question for Cindy.
Matthew? We can't hear you, Matt. You're on mute.
Sorry, I grabbed these notes beforehand, but I didn't scroll down. The other two things, just really want to emphasize diversity, equity, and inclusion, absolute must. I think, we live in California, we live in a very diverse community, and having someone that really has a strong sense of that, I think Tara referenced JEDI, would be absolutely essential. If these are proven leaders already that are coming to you, understanding and having conversations with their former staff, looking at how they were in terms of their leadership style, what their retention rates were, because I think that the staff that's been building up right now at SDCP is quite a collection of magnificent individuals, and I would hate to see that change with new leadership, which happens organically anyways. But that's just a few other comments.
Can I piggyback on that really quickly? Mr. Chairman? Yeah.
Sure.
I didn't. I was trying to be really quick at the beginning, but the back end of our process does include reference checks, and we do 360. So we'll talk to former supervisors, former peers, former subordinates to learn about leadership style and culture in the organization, all those important things. We also will do fuller background checks that the organization needs in terms of civil, criminal, DMV, credit, education verification, all those things to make sure everybody's on stable legal foundation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any more hands up.
Oh, I still had a question and I see Carolyn's hand is now raised as well.
Okay.
Cindy, I was wondering, how can the public weigh in? I've had a few people ask, they saw this agenda item. What is the best way for the community to share feedback about this?
We had talked about that. I'm open. And when I share contact details with you, if you want to pass those along to folks, just let them know they can call me, they can email me. That's probably best. I'd love to say we can have a community forum or 2 or 3, but I also understand your perspective and the boards and staff says, let's get going. Let's get this person on board. So I'll be open to receiving information from anyone who wants to contact me. Just share my contact details, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I just wanted to know really quick if someone here would summarize JEDI. In case people are listening that don't know the acronym.
Matthew, you want to summarize JEDI? Well, you're on mute.
I can chime in. It's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Thank you. Sorry, I was roughly in my notes. Yes, and that the JEDI concept is becoming more and more essential, especially in the advocacy and in the community, so that we can kind of address some of the intersectional issues that we've been facing. So,
got it. And I agree. So. Yeah.
Okay, can we? Are we done?
Last thing. So we've asked moving forward to have internally or for the CAC to have a monthly update on the CEO surge. Are you able to, Cindy, come back or have a report each month so we're able to stay in the loop on this?
Yep, happy to.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll jump off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Item number 6, discuss and provide recommendation to the board on amending the Joint Powers Authority Agreement to allow all qualified candidates to apply to the top leadership position. And, to David's point, yes, we have addressed this, but the responses that we got were slightly disrespectful and not really conducive to transparency. And to I think it was Matt's point, and maybe Tara's point, I feel that we as community advisors need to keep whatever issue hot and not just go for whatever they tell us, because it is very important that the most qualified candidates in this region can apply. And if that's and if they're not willing to change the JPA, which they're, from my understanding, they're changing all the time, right? I don't understand that.
Excuse me, Chair Price, just on the order of sequence, we have some submitted comments for today. Would you like to have those be read now or
Sure,
after?
yeah.
Okay. So let me start with the written submissions. Okay, so gonna start off with comment by Sheila Oates. And actually, I was just reminded that we did not take public comment for item number 5 for the previous item. Chair, would you like to go back and see if members of the public right now
Okay, are there any public comments for item number 5, the item we just discussed and had a presentation on from the public?
Folks a minute, see if they want to raise their hand. Okay. All right, seeing none, I will move on to the written submitted comments for today. And I'll start with apologies for any mispronunciation of names. Sheila Ot. She says, good afternoon, Chair Price and committee members. My name is Sheila Ot. I am a resident of San Diego. I respectfully urge you to modify the joint powers agreement, which would ensure that qualified candidates are considered for this position. Thank you. Thank you for your time. That's one public comment. Let me go on to the others. We have another public comment from Karina Gonzalez. And the comment is as follows. Hello, Chair Price and committee members. My name is Karina Gonzalez and I live in Chula Vista. I urge you to provide a recommendation to the board to amend the JPA to allow the most qualified candidates to apply for the position. STCP will be one of the largest CCE programs in the state and is only going to continue to grow. We need to ensure that we have a local leader who will champion the issues that cities and community members care about. Thank you. Moving on to the next comment is Joyce Lane. The comment is, hello. As someone who advocated for community choice aggregation in San Diego for many years and is familiar with much of the work involved in getting us to this point, I urge you to recommend that the board amend the JPA agreement to allow all qualified candidates to apply for the top leadership position at STCP. If the goal is to create a successful community choice program, then there is no reason not to allow all candidates to apply for the leadership position. Within the ranks of the STCP staff, there are extremely capable people who should be allowed to apply. One person in particular was instrumental in bringing the program into existence. She certainly has the knowledge and the ability to lead the organization and should be given the opportunity to compete for the position. Thank you, Joyce Lane, Board Vice President, San Diego 350. I believe we have one more. Yes, this comment comes from Malika Marston. She says, I support agenda number 6. Thanks. That concludes written public comments. If any attendees want to give a live public comment, please raise your hand and I can go ahead and unmute you. Okay, that concludes public comment, Chair.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have 3 panelists who have their hands up. Yeah, I don't know who put their hand up first, whether it's Ed or Tara or Matthew. So let's go ladies first. Tara.
Thank you. I guess I would want to give a little background for those who may not have been at the board meeting. So at our last meeting, we had the agenda item to put something forward for the board. And we discussed the CEO search. We discussed how we wanted to be on the CEO search committee and we still don't have an answer on that yet. And how we wanted the JPA amended so all qualified candidates would be eligible to apply. And we wanted an update on that. So at the board meeting a couple weeks later, I think a week later because of Thanksgiving, there were public comments. A few of us made public comments as well as other members of the community. And those comments didn't get addressed. And one of the board members cited legal reasons. However, I've spoken with some other people and the JPA is amended in public, but they're having JPA amendment discussions about the CEO in private. And so I'm curious, I would like additional information on that to understand the rules of what can be public. I know we've talked about a lot today about transparency and how many of us fought for this program to be an alternative to SDG&E because we wanted to avoid those closed door meetings. We wanted to be able to have the community weigh in. So I think this is an important item. And I guess it's 3-part. One, yes, I support amending it. We'll hear more feedback today, but I'm happy to make a motion today. And I think that's the difference between this meeting and last meeting. Last meeting, we couldn't vote on it since it was the agenda item for the board, but today it is an item we can vote on. And I think it's important. And I think there's additional items related to this that I'm hoping that the board can address at the next meeting, or preferably come to our monthly meetings and keep us posted so we're all on the same page and don't feel like we're left in the dark.
Thank you. Ed?
Well, thanks. That was actually what I was asking about in terms of the background and summary. So I think it's been asked and answered, so to speak. Thanks.
Thank you. Matthew?
Just wanted to elevate that I too would support a recommendation of the board for amending the JPA to allow qualified candidates to apply. It just makes sense. So just to be frank, like this whole CEO search process is becoming a bit concerning to me. I'm not happy that the community voices at the board were being ignored. I'm also disappointed in legal counsel's response at the last board meeting on this matter. While it is correct, an initial FPCC or FPPC memo recommended an exclusion, there have been follow-up legal memos offering simple pathways via JPA amendments to permit Cody to apply. So legal counsel only elevated the first half of the story and then omitted the second half, which hints to me at a lack of transparency and honesty, which then raises serious concerns in my mind about what legal advice SDCP is receiving. Additionally, we keep hearing about these legal memos that can provide a pathway, but those are being held back for unclear reasons. So this element of the process is becoming quite opaque, and I'm worried that it will impact the residential rollout next year if this issue continues to escalate from concerns from the community and from advocates. So this is turning into a distraction, and it requires leadership from the board, which is why I'm happy that the CAC is discussing this matter to prompt them to act. If the board doesn't want to amend the JPA to allow qualified applicants to apply, again, just to apply, not to appoint, they should be on the record with a vote. That's leadership, not hiding behind ghost memos or closed door meetings. So I will be supporting this motion to prod the board to do more, to be more transparent, and to be more responsive to us at the Community Advisory Committee and in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. David? David Harris?
David, you're muted. I think you are talking.
Thanks. Yeah, I was muted. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to give some additional background that I think will help this committee as it considers this issue. As you probably know, personnel items such as CEO position and recruitment are handled by the board of directors in closed session meetings. And we know there's been at least 3 board meetings in which these closed sessions have taken place: August, September, and October. And there's only been 1 meeting, the September meeting, when it was agendized to discuss the CEO recruitment. And at that meeting in September, the only action the board took was to appoint the subcommittee of Member Baber and Member Padilla that will do the work on the CEO recruitment process. So we know, and they did at the September meeting take public comments. At the October meeting, there were additional public comments. At least 3 members of this committee spoke at one of those or both of those meetings. In my mind, the board has had ample opportunity to consider our concerns, that we have expressed those concerns repeatedly. And at every opportunity, they had sidestepped this issue. They are not willing to discuss it. They are not interested in a recommendation from this committee. And they will not agendize it in an open forum. So I'm like, why beat a dead horse? The decision has already been made. We're just going to, I I don't see that at this point, the board is open to any further discussion of this. They weren't open to discussion of it in the first place. And I understand why you interpret that as being opaque and not involving the community in this decision, but it's clear that the board has already considered this and there's nothing more to be done.
Thank you for your opinion. Tara?
I've spoken already, so I'm back in the queue.
Yeah,
Tom was next, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
I think other eye.
Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew and everybody. I just got my question that I asked about a half an hour ago answered. I'm in favor of amending. Thank you.
Whoever thinks they need to go next, please go next.
Ed, go ahead, since your first raise was your question that was answered, and then I'm happy to go.
Go ahead, Tara.
Okay. David, you mentioned that we know CEO search discussions happen in closed door meetings, and I don't know that. I don't know if Sebastian, it doesn't look like Nick's on the line. I'm not a Brown Act expert or attorney, but I question what is able to be shared. JPA amendments are shared in public, but why JPA amendments specific to CEO are not in this case, I don't know that's normal. And there's a lot that is happening in closed door and they cite legal reasons, but I haven't seen in writing, this is the legal reason. At the very least, if they're deciding they're not going to change the JPA for Cody to apply, why can't they tell us? We're not changing it because of this reason. There's just no communication about it. And that's where it's concerning to me. So it sounds like everyone's chimed in who wanted to on this. I would like to make a motion to proceed with having the CAC recommend to the board to amend the JPA to allow all qualified candidates to apply for top leadership positions at SDCP.
Second the motion.
I stepped away for a moment.
Could I add one additional comment
Please.
before we take a vote? So at the last CAC meeting, when this came up, I had made a suggestion that members of this committee who really feel strongly about this should contact a member of the board to discuss it directly. And I did that myself. I contacted Member Baber, who is on the CEO subcommittee. And the answer I got to my questions was, I'm not at liberty to discuss this issue with you. If you want more information, take a look at the FPPC document, the advice letter, and that will answer your questions. So I just don't see where this is going. We've brought this issue up repeatedly over the last several months. The board refuses to discuss it in open forum, and I understand why. I don't necessarily think it's fair that this process is proceeding, but the way it is. But I think we have to realize that the board doesn't want our input on this. That's it.
Thank you. And to your point, I have spoken with a member of the board on this, and they suggested that we just keep pushing. In addition, and I don't know how this is going to be taken or going to be viewed, but there was a lot of drama surrounding slavery. And if the people didn't want to stop slavery and just went for the okie doke, I'd still be a slave picking cotton somewhere, right? The Black Panthers took up arms against the police department and brought, rifles to the state capitol so that children could have a free breakfast and lunch program, right? So I'm not one to personally, I don't know about the rest of the people, but I don't give up a fight until I'm for sure, right? And right now there's too much uncertainty about this, and opening this up is the right thing to do, right? And so I don't mind getting in a good fight, and this is a good fight. I'm not saying that, one person has to be hired over another person. I just want all qualified applicants, all qualified people be allowed to apply. And that's all we're asking. And to Matt's point, you were directed to that thing you were directed to, but they didn't speak about the second part of that directive, which offered opportunities to rectify the first part. So, that's just my humble opinion. I'm not going to stop until they just, say, Eddie, we're not going to do it. And they haven't taken a vote on it. They have not taken a vote at board level on whether or not they will or won't amend the JPA to allow all qualified applicants to apply. To somebody else's point earlier, we want to have it on record. And if they're not willing to go on record, then they're not willing to do this. So, but if they're willing to do this, then, they got to stand by their decision. And I think that's kind of what's being said today also. Carolyn, you have your hand up?
Yeah, for me, what I'm thinking is Tara, some of your original comments about providing information. I would want to see some of those things specifically listed here. So provide information about the JPA agreement. Consider attending one of our meetings to answer questions, and then asking, is there a pathway for additional candidates to be able to apply? And that pathway, part of that would be in the JPA agreement. And so if we focused on wanting more information about the JPA agreement and what the possible modifications are, I'm pretty sure those are right. Those are all public. Those are public information items. I think that's, if we go in that direction, that might be less restricted or getting answers that we can't answer that. But I also wanted to comment that some comments are being made that are very close to saying, we want this person for CEO. And that's a problem, because that's not what we want to be putting forward. So I think we want to focus on the JPA agreement, and that's just some thoughts that I have. So thank you.
Ed?
Yes, thank you so much. Just wanted to follow up. I do support and agree with Carolyn in terms of perhaps there's a focus for the CAC to pursue. I do not believe it is within our scope, nor should be our goal, to be a headhunter for a particular person, but to espouse, to support, and to advocate for full and fair opportunity. I think that's well within our scope. So as practically speaking, from what I've heard, and this is what I had raised my hand before in terms of trying to gather the background and the information as to how this issue or related questions were presented, it seems to me, and I believe it was David, I do apologize, I'm not following everybody who's speaking, but I do believe it was David, is that practically speaking, as he understood, and therefore as I understand, this matter has already been presented to the board. And so if we don't like the response, if we believe it's indicative of lack of transparency, so to speak, it may even be indication that they have essentially voted and they don't want to pursue it. That's something else. Is there an indication, however, and I guess I'm either asking you, Chair, or staff, was this precise question, whether the JPA should be amended, not brought to the attention of the board? It seems from all accounts it was. This is what we discussed at the last meeting. It's on, I think the CAC therefore is on record as providing support for doing it. The board essentially has provided a reply. I think from a practical point of view, what's outlined by Carolyn, and it's consistent with David, is the way we ought to approach. But I would leave it to you, Chair, or to others to indicate whether or not this precise question of amending the JPA and what the specific language is, can it be confirmed? Was that provided, presented, shared, communicated by anybody on behalf of the CAC to the board already?
And I think Matthew or Tara could most adequately answer that question.
I would say no. So somehow the CAC update that Chair Price used to give at the board meetings is no longer on the agenda, although Councilmember or Director Montgomery Steppe suggested bringing that back. So Chair Price made a public comment on the CEO item and shared this the CAC's feedback, but it wasn't an item for them to vote on. And again, they haven't provided the reasoning. To me, my biggest issue is we ask for things, the public asks for things, and there's no reason. Like, it doesn't even sometimes get addressed, and they vote otherwise without an explanation. That's what's concerning to me, is they're not like, I would like to know why. If it's a legal reason, show us, okay, Brown Act, this, and that. This is why we can't do that. But I have not seen justification. I've heard these memos can be released, the memos that say the JPA can be amended, but then we don't see the memos and we don't have a reason why those can't be released. So that's what's concerning. Just because an attorney says so, not every attorney is ethical. Not every attorney is always right. So I'd like, if they could share that information, then we can double check it and then we know. And I agree with Eddie's point, just because the board may not want our feedback, I think it's our responsibility. And we have community comments on this. The community commented at various board meetings asking to make the amendment. No one's asking for Cody to get the role. Yes, she won last year in a competitive search. I don't hear people asking that. They just want the opportunity for the best talent to be able to apply, since we want the best possible CEO. And I have concerns that maybe people don't want the best CEO. SDG&E doesn't want to see this program succeed, in my opinion, San Diego Community Power. And it's concerning if that the CEO search is being undermined. And that's what I'm really fearful about. And that's why I just want transparency and for us to get answers if we're asking questions that aren't being addressed.
Matthew, I see your hand up.
Oh, yes. Well, I echo Tara's concerns. I mean, that's why this entire project is so pivotal, and why long-term leadership that we can trust and know went through a public and transparent process is critical to this agency's success, since this program is rooted in community. I think to Ed's point, like, this is a conversation about fairness for me. Whoever this firm and the board decide is going to be the leader of this organization, that is going to be the leader of this organization, but at least give qualified candidates the opportunity to apply and go through the process. That's all we're asking for at this stage. And I do appreciate David's input. Thank you. I respect the board's authority and purview on this matter. However, the board is a body of elected officials who are public servants to the community. So if we raised our hands up every time and said, well, never mind, the board said, this is it, even though they haven't said anything clearly to us or provided us the information we need to be sure that that's a firm decision. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here today if we just accepted what politicians tell us. This organization would not exist if we just accepted what politicians tell us. So I hope that we can provide this recommendation, and if the board wipes their hands and says, nope, thanks, at least we're on the record on the side of having a transparent, open process that's fair to everyone who could potentially be leading this organization. So that's why I support this item, and I'm hoping that we can earn the support of the rest of the board or committee today.
Gary? Gary Jones? Your hand is up, sir.
Gary, you're muted.
I muted, I unmuted, I muted again. I don't know what. Terrible. I think the parliamentary term, and I'm not a good parliamentarian, is to call question. In other words, let's vote on this.
Well, so I have a motion, but Carolyn asked me to amend it, so I'm happy to make a friendly amendment, which I think would be the next step, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, so I will amend.
All right, Anna, can you restate it slowly so I can type it?
Of course, I can email it to you as well.
Yeah, okay, sorry, thank you.
So the motion is for the CAC to ask the board at its December meeting to amend the JPA agreement to allow all qualified candidates to apply for the top leadership position at SDCP. It's part one. Part two is to vote on allowing a CAC member to be part of the CEO search committee. And part three is to have the board provide CAC monthly updates about the CEO search until the position is filled.
On the first part about the JPA agreement, because there's conflict between what they tell us and what's available. Can we add those amendments to that document they're talking about that has been brought to our attention?
To release the memo?
Right.
Yes. Okay. All right, so 4-part ask. I'm going to repeat it. Motion is for the CAC to ask the board to vote at its December meeting to amend the JPA to allow all qualified candidates to apply for the top leadership position at SDCP. That's one. Number two, release the memo regarding the CEO JPA amendments.
Yeah, I don't know how to verbalize that. But, to the conversations that have been had today, there's apparently, the lawyer told us one thing, but he didn't tell us the whole thing because there's been amendments to that thing, whatever that thing is, right? And so we want them to not just release it, but give them the opportunity to speak to the possible solutions to this, because they just say they can't do it, right? And apparently this has come up before in other municipalities and it can be done.
Okay, so what would your suggestion be? Release the memo regarding the CEO position or explain why it can't be released?
No, well,
Okay.
maybe. Does anybody else understand what I'm trying to say?
Well, I think the problem is, we don't have a description of this magical memo, a title, date, memo number, or something like that.
Right.
I think we can call it the memo regarding the CEO position. There shouldn't be many memos. I think that would encompass it.
You could put memo and then just like '*S, just in case there's additionals.
Oh, yep, got it.
But I think, I think also it needs providing additional information about the JPA agreement or provide additional information about amending the JPA agreement.
So our ask is for them to amend it.
Well, the original ask is what you said.
Right.
But when we were talking about the memo, I believe the memo would give us additional information.
Oh, okay, got it.
JPA amendment. That's what I think the memo is, the purpose of the memo.
I understand, thank you.
And it would give a solution to our request.
Yes.
Okay,
Just
so
like, we don't know. We can't refer to the memo because we don't know what the memo's called or does it have a number or whatever.
So ask 2 is to release the memos regarding the JPA amendment pertaining to the CEO position. Okay, Thank you, Carolyn. Is that, Eddie, does that,
Well, and maybe that needs to be number one,
okay,
maybe. The hierarchy, release the memo so we can look at it, then vote on what we just looked at.
okay.
That makes sense?
Can I ask real quickly? That wasn't me. This is, I just want to make sure, because I know, I think this is why we're having the meeting today, but this is asking for possible board action and consideration at the December meeting. So by doing it today, this still allows, per the timeline, to agendize items for the board to actually review, respond, and possibly take action at their December board meeting?
I think that's a Sebastian question, but
Yeah.
the December meeting was moved up because of Christmas, but I would think because they have the Brown Act 72 hours in advance, that this would have enough time. Staff knows that it's on our agenda today, and our meeting got moved up today, so I would hope that this can be on that next meeting. But Sebastian, do you know?
So great questions. So a couple of things. The item before you is related to amending the JPA on allowing all qualified candidates to apply for the top leadership position. I'm not an attorney, but I do have some concerns that the additional asks mentioned here are not properly agendized, and so may have to be added to the January meeting. And then with that, it can give staff more time to add it to the agenda. So if we have a general CEO item, then perhaps we can add those more specifics. But since today's item is a bit more specific, then just to err on the side of caution, I do have some slight concerns on what's included here and additional asks for today.
Sebastian, would releasing the memo, since it's related to amending the JPA, and that I feel like that's all very intertwined, if it was just those two, do you feel comfortable with that?
I would say that obviously if you'll take a vote, staff won't stand in the way. Our role is to facilitate kind of the process. One suggestion would be that the vote on the item today takes place, and then the additional discussion be brought to next week, so the board is aware. But obviously, again, just facilitating on kind of the process here.
Yeah, Ed?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be helpful here, and I don't want to get bogged down too much perhaps in procedural considerations. But it seems to me, one, as we put on our own agenda, it's the question of whether our CAC should recommend an amendment to the JPA. That's first and foremost, and that's a separate question. And I think while I may actually disagree with what I think the majority is, I'm fine if the CAC wants to carry forth with that more formally. That's one. Don't we have on our own agenda a item that's always a boilerplate that allows for sort of the listing of any questions, concerns, or issues that the chair or any other CAC representative can be sort of authorized or directed to go to the board meeting and represent? And that's where the other questions may fall in, or can't, quite honestly, a chair, you appear at the next board meeting and say, while it wasn't on an agenda, the CAC discussed the following, and I want to make the board aware that there is, either unanimous support or support, majority support, whatever, or at least that the CAC continues to have concerns on these following questions. I mean, I just think those are ways to get forward with where we are now. I would, however, ask, and I think it might be for Tara, what is the precise language, if you have any, that would be posed as the amendment to the JPA? I understand the issue is trying to allow for most or all qualified candidates. What is the exact language, and as to what provision, section, or area of the JPA are you trying to address, if you know?
Yes, so to your first part, we can suggest items for the agenda. As I mentioned, we no longer have Chair Price speaking about general updates, but I'm hoping that does get brought back. So I think today we'll probably end up needing to recommend that they discuss these items, but part of the frustration is that amendment or it hasn't been addressed. Like we'll mention we discussed this, but they don't address it, where we're looking for them to say, okay, we're going to vote on the memo, or we're not releasing the memo because of this reason. So it's going to be, I think, procedurally what we need to do today, but it doesn't actually get the answers we're looking for. It's my understanding the actual amendment, based on what Silicon Valley Clean Energy has, their JPA says the board may appoint a CEO, where ours says the board shall appoint a CEO. I believe it's just switching that one word, but I would defer to Sebastian on that.
So on the process today, I wanted to again mention that while we don't have an attorney on today, I want to be clear that if you all want to take votes on the additional specific items, we can move forward with those actually, and then check with legal to see if they stand and with the board chair. And if they don't, then we just carry forward with the one that was the main one. So I want to just clarify, facilitate again, give you guys all the options in this discussion.
Could I make a quick suggestion on the procedure? Can we vote just on the original motion and take the rest and direct our chair to send a letter to the CEO and the chair of the board requesting those items? That is the memos, et cetera.
Personally, I like the idea of pushing forward the 3 or 4 items we had, and if need be, if that gets scales down, that's fine, and Eddie can be there to advocate for what we discussed. But I think a letter to the CEO is less impactful than asking the board members to discuss it during a public meeting this month.
I'm going to speak up. There's several other hands up, and I'm going to jump in. There's the issue of they have to listen to a recommendation that we send to them. The agendized item is to recommend that we ask for a JPA amendment to allow all qualified candidates. I think we should vote on that. And then maybe if we want something else, let's agendize it for the next meeting to take to them in the January meeting in process here. To Sebastian's concern, and again, I'm not a parliamentarian, but I think the fact that we agendized a single one ask recommendation, that is what we can pass and have them either accept it or decline it.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Wow, all the hands that were raised magically disappeared.
Okay, so it sounds like I will amend the.
Yeah, amend it one more time.
Okay, so the motion is for the CAC to ask the board to vote at its December meeting to amend the JPA to allow all qualified candidates to apply for the top leadership position at SDCP. And I'd like to add, and if this legally cannot be shared, explain why.
Right. And, okay, let's vote on that. Shall we vote on that?
Well, we need a second, but I don't know if there's any.
My pre-intent is still in effect.
Say that again, Tom?
I previously seconded and I will do so again.
Okay. All members in favor?
I think Sebastian probably wants to do a roll call.
Oh, yeah.
I see Matt and Ed have their hands raised as well.
And Ed, you got, I think Ed just likes raising his hand. Ed, you got the hand up again.
Yes, just real quick then, and for purposes of trying to keep this item moving, ultimately, I will support it. I really don't understand, bottom line, what was to be accomplished here, however. I get that you want to get on record and get something formal to the board in terms of the more precise question of can a mechanism be created, developed, or amended to allow for fuller consideration of possible candidates. I understand that. Then you get into essentially asking, well, tell us why, if not. I think the answer is already pretty apparent. There's a cite to a legal exemption. That's all you're going to get. But, you know, for purposes of going forth, and again, I don't think, I may not agree fully with everything, but for purposes of allowing the CAC to maintain a voice and presence, it's probably good for us to push this forward. So I would support it.
Thank you. Sebastian, can you call for a vote?
Yes, Chair.
So I could, hearing Ed, well, Ed, I still want to proceed with it. I can make a friendly amendment to the last part. Instead of explaining why, how about we change it to, if they're unable to do so, produce documentation demonstrating as such. I think if we were told a legal reason, then we would, this wouldn't be happening. We just haven't been, it hasn't been explained to us. And so it just has been concerning. So that would be my final amendment to the motion.
And I think it's incumbent upon whoever seconded the motion to accept that amendment. Again, I can support it. I think bottom line, however, is we aren't going to get anything. If you want to get the board on record as just not providing anything, okay, but I don't see how just simply asking. Asked, already answered is the usual retort in a courtroom on something like this. But it's fine, and again, I would support even as amended.
I still second it.
Can we have the motion repeated, just for the record?
Yes, okay. The motion is for the CAC to ask the board to vote at its December meeting to amend the JPA agreement to allow all qualified candidates to apply for the top leadership position at SDCP. If the board is unable to do so, please produce documentation as much.
As to why?
As to why. And I will re-email this to you, Anna.
You might need to email that to everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been typing as fast as I can, and I think I missed a couple of words.
Now can we take a vote? Sebastian?
Okay. Carolyn Schofield,
Yes.
Matthew Vasilakis,
Aye.
David Harris,
No,
Tom Summers,
Yes.
Gary Johns,
Yes.
Ed Lopez,
Yes.
Anna Webb,
Yes,
excuse me, Secretary Webb,
thank you. Yes.
Vice Chair Hammond,
Yes.
and Chair Price.
Yep.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 7. I'm assuming I need to ask for public comments, correct?
For the previous item or for this next item?
Next item, number 7.
Yes.
I should
And
ask that for every item, correct?
yeah, I just
Okay.
want to make sure, we did entertain public comment for the previous item at the beginning of the item. I just saw someone raise their hand up. I'm not sure if they're for this item or for item number 7.
Well, hopefully they're for item number 7.
Okay. Well then, Lori Saldana, actually, let me go ahead and pass the baton over to Nelson, and then Nelson can start the conversation, and we can take public comment after his discussion.
Hello, committee. Sebastian, do you have the agenda posted? Hi, everyone. So while Sebastian pulls that up, I just wanted to provide a quick update. So we've been working, I think we provided an update at the last meeting, mentioning how we are working on an RFP or request for proposals for what we are calling the Community Power Plan. So the request for proposals was issued last month by Calpine, and they are assisting us in this effort. And we are now coming to you seeking to get 2 CAC representatives to assist us in reviewing the submissions that we got and joining us in the interview process for selecting the firm. So that is the item before you. We don't have an extensive presentation.
Hey, Nelson, this is more of a discussion just to explain the process and then quickly appoint the 2 CAC members. So this is the only slide for this item.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you had mentioned?
That we're seeking to appoint the committee to appoint 2 representatives from the Community Advisory Committee to assist us and recruit in reviewing the submissions we received and also in joining us for the interview process to select a firm that will conduct the needs assessment and ultimately develop the community power plan.
Thank you.
Okay, so what you need from us is 2 people.
Correct.
Okay, is there any discussion on this?
yes. I wanted to nominate Matthew Vasilakis and Carolyn Schofield to be on this team to review the community power plan proposals.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. I think they'd be great representatives.
Any discussion? Ooh, I wish every item was like this. Matthew, can you take a vote?
Oh, I just wanted to thank David and Tara, and I accept the nomination.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if they know what they're getting themselves into, but thank you. Sebastian, can you take a vote?
Do you want to ask Carolyn if she accepts before we vote?
Sure. Carolyn, do you accept before we vote?
Yes, Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you also.
Great.
Looking forward to it.
Sebastian? We're trying to break a record here, Sebastian.
I'm moving. I just want to acknowledge there's a member of the public whose hand is raised.
Okay, let's hear from him.
All right, let me. Okay, so Lori Saldana, you will have 3 minutes. You've been unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I haven't had a chance to meet all of you, but my name is Lori Saldana. I represented the city of San Diego in the state legislature for 3 years. And during that time, I was also the speaker pro tem. So I presided over the legislative process. And I just want to remind you all that, and I chaired Housing and Community Development. As part of the process under the Brown Act, you need to hear public comment before you vote on a measure and before you discuss the measure, because the whole idea of community input is that we can provide you with information that may influence the outcome of your actions. So this is the first community advisory committee meeting that I have been able to join, and I came in the middle of your prior discussion. It sounded like you were concerned about transparency and not getting the information you need. And I think on this item, it's the same thing. People are being appointed to assist in the recruitment of community power plan firm. But unless the agenda is incomplete, there has been no materials provided to explain exactly what your responsibilities will be. Or maybe they were presented to the members, but they weren't presented in the agenda packet. So as someone who has served in elected office, been an appointee up to the presidential level, and also participates in a lot of community meetings under the Brown Act and Bagley-Keene Act, those are the two open meetings laws in California, I just encourage you to provide a more detailed agenda packet so that members of the public who are curious about the work you're doing and the work that San Diego Community Power is doing are prepared to understand what it is you are voting on, what it is you're discussing, and what actions you could potentially be taking. So on this item, my question is, was some description of responsibilities provided to your committee to inform members what their responsibilities will be? Was there any kind of a job description, what you will be doing to help you determine who the best candidates will be to serve in this search for a firm regarding developing a community power plan? So I'll just leave it at that for now, but this is my first time joining this meeting, first time looking over your agenda. And if there is an additional packet of information that is on the website that I haven't found, I'd be happy to take direction on where that is on the Community Power website. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Gary. We did have a presentation. I think it was last meeting, or certainly in the last two meetings. So I think we certainly have presented publicly what the community power plan is, and we understand the scope of it. I don't know if previous agenda counts for addressing Ms. Saldana's concerns there or not, but I just wanted to point that out, that we have had in-depth presentation on the community power plan in public.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public, Sebastian?
No, Chair, I don't see any more hands raised.
And hopefully, you heard what Ms. Saldana was mentioning, It makes a lot of sense, and maybe we could do better next time or in the future. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's a lot more work for the staff, but I'm not staff, so, you know, do your thing. So maybe you can call for a vote, Sebastian?
I just want to note that Tom Thomas's hand is up.
Oh, I can't see that, so, Tom?
Yeah, ditto what Gary just said, and I thank you, Lori Saldana, for your comment, and just a suggestion to check the recording of the last meeting. You'll see that we did give plenty of time to look at this and realize what the community power plan is. So we're not going into this blind.
Anna Webb, your hand's up, ma'am.
Yes, I just wanted to tag on that and thank her as well for her comments, because I do agree that going forward, if we're going to be nominating people for a committee, that it should be in our agenda exactly what they're getting into so the public knows. So noted. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Sebastian?
Matthew Vasilakis?
Oh, we're voting yes?
Yes, we're voting on.
Aye, thank you.
Carolyn Schofield?
Yes.
Tom Summers?
Yes.
Gary Jones?
Yes.
David Harris?
Yes.
Eva Lopez?
Yes.
Secretary Webb?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hammond?
Yes.
And Chair Price?
Yep.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
We didn't break a record this time, but one day we're going to break a record on moving agenda items. Receive briefing and provide comment. We're on agenda item number 8. Receive briefing and provide comment on local renewable energy and energy storage requests for information.
Yeah, I think that's me. Thank you, Chair Price, and appreciate all the discussion to date. I know we've been at this for a little while, so I'm happy to move this along, but want to give you an all update on where we are with some local procurement. And then next, also a contract that we have been working on here for a while and expect to take to the board next week. That's the next item. Just to give you a teaser, I've got 2 items here. So the first, though, is on a local request for information, and just want to share what we have there so far. Let's see, next slide, please. There we go, thank you. So a quick overview of the RFI. I think this has been discussed in front of the board. I'm not sure if we've discussed with you all previously, but we announced in August kind of our intent to get a sense of the market in the San Diego area and Imperial County, a request for information for renewable energy and energy storage facilities and projects that the developers are either working on or have interest in, or are looking to market and make available. So we issued it on August 18th with an initial deadline for responses on September 1st, and kind of uniquely or creatively maybe made this a kind of an evergreen RFI with rolling submissions. So we made it very clear that we'd be taking a look at submissions that were received by September 1st, but have continued interest, obviously, in contracting for renewable energy and energy storage facilities in San Diego and Imperial counties. So kind of an open invitation to developers and community partners to submit responses to us. So again, I mentioned some of this before, but we're looking for renewable energy and hybrid renewable energy and energy storage facilities and standalone battery storage facilities, either in San Diego or Imperial counties, or the storage facilities technically need to qualify for San Diego local resource adequacy, which basically means it's in the San Diego area. We're looking for things that can come online in the next few years. As you can see there, initial delivery date no later than December 31st, 2024, with a term of agreement, no shorter than 10 years, but up to 20 years. So that's the overview of where what we went out with. Next slide, please. Just want to give you all a quick summary of kind of what we've come back with. I can't share I can't share too many exciting details yet because we are in some kind of discussions and a lot of it is still confidential. But we reviewed initial responses received by September 1st. I think we were pretty pleased with the response that we got, especially given given a few weeks to respond. It is a somewhat tight turn for the market, but again, we received 17 proposals from the market with over 300 megawatts of renewable energy and energy storage kind of hybrid facilities, and then over 1,200 megawatts of energy storage capacity. Again, this is for kind of utility scale in front of the meter projects. And so again, I think we were very, very pleased to see that kind of response from the market. We also did get a number of notices from developers or from other community members who said, yes, we have a project in mind, or we're working on something, and we'll get back to you with pricing or with specifics down the road. And so again, really the intent here was, one, to get a sense of what's in the market, but two, to make it clear that we as SDCP really are here to stimulate the market. We're in the interest of developing new renewable energy and clean energy storage in the region, and so to kind of make sure that that everyone's aware. Right? It feels like there hasn't been a whole lot of procurement kind of directed in the San Diego region for a while, and so I wanted to make sure that everyone's aware who we are, that we're here, we're serious about about buying and developing renewable energy and clean energy storage. And so I think we were pretty happy with, again, the response we got, and then also received a number of notices with interesting, like, thanks for letting us know. We'll get back to you as we have more to come. So the next slide, please. And so just wanted to, again, make you all aware kind of where we are in this process. We are providing feedback to those who provide proposals, either looks good or interesting, but here are some things we'd like to see to make this more kind of competitive, more appealing. Our intent is to learn the market, also to hopefully stimulate, again, development in the region, and to kind of inform some of the procurement that we do down the road with more formal RFOs. There's potential that we may enter bilateral negotiations with some of these projects as well. Obviously, that'll be with board direction, or at least the committee of the board, the ad hoc contracts committee. That is a kind of setting in a confidential matter, so we can discuss pricing and value and all those things that are otherwise confidential. So we may enter bilateral negotiations with a couple handful of projects there as well. And then, as I mentioned, there have been some additional submissions that have come in again after the deadline, which is the point. But we'll be reviewing those as they come in as well, with the expectation here of announcing a new RFO, kind of a more formal request for offers, as opposed to request for information, but a request for offers for renewable energy and energy storage that we expect to get out early next year. So we just wanted to make you all aware of that. Again, I think we're really excited to see that kind of development here, potential in the region. Certainly a whole lot of requirements coming down from the CPUC and the California ISO as far as what we need to contract for and where it needs to be. So it certainly is quite the optimization problem or for us to have. Right, it's a fun problem to have, and it's a fun optimization again. But so a lot of factors to take into account as we do that. But I think we're excited to see that much kind of capacity there, and potentially maybe discussing some of these bilaterally, and then also just excited to see that we have a good bit of resources available here to participate in future solicitations and potentially contract with as well. So I think that's just the summary here on the local RFI. Wanted to brief you all on that before we kind of move forward with it. Make sure you're all aware. I'm happy to take any questions or feedback as well.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I have a question or a comment or a concern or all three. In this,
excuse me, just want to make you aware that there is a member of the public with their hands raised.
Oops. Well, let's hear from them first.
Okay, perfect.
And give them my apologies for not adhering to what I just said I would adhere to.
No worries. That's what I'm here for. Okay, Lori Saldana, you will have 3 minutes. And you have been unmuted.
Yes, thank you. And Eddie, as a retired teacher, I know we have to practice skills in order to make them part of our routine. So no worries. I did have a question for Byron. Are you looking at some of the housing developments, such as one approved by council this week that is generating on-site solar as part of affordable housing? And is that, are you, in addition to putting out a request for information on these projects, are you also actively researching what's coming through the pipeline, so to speak, in development, especially on things like these public projects where they are adding rooftop solar to help offset the costs of utilities for residents in these affordable housing developments? So I'm just curious how those public projects factor into the request for information. Are you waiting for people to reach out to you, or do you identify these additional energy generation projects?
I'll recognize the comment. Just kind of a point of order here, Chair and Sebastian. Am I allowed to? I know we've had questions in former board meetings. Am I allowed to answer questions?
I believe you are allowed to answer general questions. I don't think there could be a back and forth. So yeah, go ahead, Byron.
Yeah. Thanks, Sebastian. Just want to make sure I didn't I didn't wander astray again here. But yeah, thanks for the question. And certainly, yeah, I think a lot of the rooftop solar and the kind of behind the meter and smaller scale and aggregated projects are certainly part of our future here at SDCP. Yeah, I think this solicitation, I think we cast it as far and wide as possible. Obviously, we've got a list of developers, and we cast it as well to a number of other organizations, trade organizations, and others that are involved in the area. So I think it was clear we're looking for kind of any and all clean renewable energy and energy storage. So that certainly was our intent here. Again, largely looking for projects that were kind of utility scale in front of the meter and largely a megawatt. We're still squarely in the walk before we run stage as well. But I do think that as we sign or look at contracts and facilities of that scale, I think also we'll be squarely looking at the resources that are rooftop or distributed or aggregated as well. So my understanding too, I don't want to speak for Nelson or Sebastian. I know they're working in the community power plan, but I think there'll be another great way as well to kind of introduce those kinds of projects as well.
I'd like to ask a question. In these RFIs and RFQs and all these things that are being put out. Yes, Sebastian?
Again, it's at your prerogative, but I just wanted to make you aware that there's another hand raised in the public comment.
Okay, let them talk then.
Okay. See here, Christina Marquez. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Price and board members, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. Byron, thank you for the update. I sent out the RFI, the request for local RFI to all the developers I know, including Jeremy Abrams, Andy Berg from NECA, our renewables council, who oversees all of our renewables for all our trades in California. So hopefully they push that out as well. We want to try and get that local energy. On another note, I know you're not allowed to say specific projects, but one that bothers IBEW Local 569 is the 50 megawatts of renewable wind power that you guys are working on procuring outside of California in New Mexico. We want to make sure that it's known that we oppose this. It does not follow SDCP's implementation plan by focusing on the development and implementation of local energy programs. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that you're aware that that item is the next item.
What? Uh-oh. Hey, I just want to try, I want to make sure that, Chair Price feels better than me. I'm here to take one for the team. So I apologize for that. So pertaining to the local RFIs, I was just testing you guys. I did send out as much information as I could. And, I want to make sure that we're able to procure local RFIs so we can get local work. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
But we will hear from you again, I would imagine.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any more hands up, Sebastian?
No, those are all the answers.
Okay, what I'd like to ask or request or whatever is that, when you're doing these RFIs or RFQs or anything with an R in it, is there any type of community, I don't even know what to, like a community character request, right? Like, wherever they're gonna position this project at, whether it's locally or in the desert or in another state or whatever, what type of community are they putting it into? What are their stipulations to the community, or have they made the communities any promises or stuff like that? Again, we're the Community Advisory Committee, and I'm under the impression that anywhere we have a footprint, we should understand what that community is, right? Like if there's something out next to El Centro, we'd like to know how they're interacting with El Centro. Not necessarily knowing how much they're selling or we're procuring the power for and all that stuff that we don't really need to know anything about, but how are they treating those communities? And how does the community feel about, the project in their community? Are there any questions like that? And is any weight given to that type of information in your RFIs or RFQs or Rs?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate the question, and yeah, that is certainly part of our evaluation process, right? Is kind of the community impact, community benefits. I'll tease as well that I think we're planning at this point to have a kind of a more formalized kind of board approved bid evaluation criteria or proposal evaluation criteria come to you probably in January. So we're drafting that now. And we'll look to kind of involve you all as well as some other stakeholders. Again, it's it's pretty similar to what we're proposing, and I think what you'll all be pretty happy with is kind of our current process. But again, recognizing that it's not been formalized and formally adopted. So one portion of that, obviously, location, obviously is one of those project locations. But in addition to that, community benefits is and will be a portion of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions for this young man? I see, are there 2 hands raised?
Young man, I appreciate it, Chair.
Well, I'm an old man, so.
Could have fooled me.
Well, there's 3 hands raised. I'll go down the way I see them. So Ed Lopez.
Well, I thought you were going to start with the oldest as well. Real briefly, I seem to recall, I think just yesterday or the day before, there was a story that a couple of NorCal CCAs have issued some bonds to purchase renewable energy. So, and I understand, we have to walk before we could run. So I'm not sure how viable or reasonable it is for SDCP to consider that type of structure or strategy. But I believe there might have even been an entity, a financing authority created in and among those CCAs. So again, that might be something that's for consideration down the road for SDCP and or other adjacent or regional CCAs as a means by which to purchase and lock in renewable energy storage and other related components.
Yes, very much appreciate the comment. Yeah, we're squarely in, as I mentioned, walk before we run. We've got to sprint every now and then go back to jogging and catch our breath every now and then too. But no, that's very much front and center is awareness wise. Again, we work closely with a number of other CCAs as well. So I think that'll be something we look to do. Again, once we get furniture in the building, so to speak, we'll start looking at those things as well. But I appreciate it.
Thank you. Matthew?
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate my support for a consideration of community benefits agreements and conversations with folks on the ground in these spaces where these projects may be impacted, so that we can avoid some of the difficult conversations we've had with previous projects. Building as much consensus as possible is key. There are always people who are in opposition, but the closer we can get to a well-rounded yes, the more that we can all move hands lockstep together. So appreciate it, Byron, and I'm excited for more local renewable distributed energy resources in our communities.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the comment, and likewise, share it.
David?
Yes, I just had a quick question for you, Byron, about the December 2024 delivery date. Does SDCP have a goal of how many megawatts of under contract by that time period?
Yes, the short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is we have a number of them, and kind of there are a few different factors to be considered here. Obviously, we have our own internal, well, not internal, but our program kind of voluntary renewable targets, right? Obviously, that we want to make sure we hit year to year, and starting now at 50%, increasing, pretty quickly here over time. So I mentioned earlier that there's kind of a number of factors that play into this, what I call kind of an optimization, right, of resources and everything else. We also have requirements from the PUC, Public Utilities Commission, to contract for a certain amount of capacity. There were recent a recent order from the PUC that required over 11 gigawatts of resources to be contracted throughout the state. With various requirements for 2023, 24, 25, and 26. So we obviously have our share of those as well for 23 and 24 online by then, and 25 and 26 following shortly thereafter. And in addition to other resource adequacy requirements, so it kind of makes your brain spin or your head hurt a little bit trying to keep track of all the requirements we have. But yeah, certainly at this point it's as much as we can, as soon as we can, right? I think another one that we have as well, we're not too concerned with, and what I'll say is that the RPS requirement for renewable portfolio standard, they're in general, we're not too concerned about it because we exceed it by so much that it's not really a binding constraint for us as an organization. But I will state that there are requirements within that require a certain percentage of our renewable energy come from long-term contracts. And so that's kind of one of them that we must consider as well, and that's measured compliance period by compliance period. When the compliance period currently is 2021 to 2024. And so we need a certain amount of energy delivered from long-term contracts in that 21 to 24 period. So again, that was one of the considerations here, to have projects online kind of before 2024 as much as possible. But my guess would be, as we move forward, we'll probably kick that date out a little bit as well. And if we keep this RFI open and kind of we haven't decided whether we'll keep this open indefinitely, or whether we'll kind of just run more routine local solicitations. But as we do that, obviously we'll consider projects and look to not just blast the email solicitation out, but also work to identify projects and organizations that we can partner with as well, to kind of help stimulate some of that as well going forward. Sorry, that was a long answer, but the short answer is yes. a number of different targets to hit.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Byron. You guys are really doing a fantastic job. My question is, with the expansion of our jurisdiction, the JPA, to include the unincorporated areas of San Diego County, I'm wondering, just generally speaking, I know you can't be specific at all, but does that open up some possibilities for energy providers to sprout up here closer to home?
Yeah, I think so. I think a number of factors certainly have made development, I think, a little tougher in the San Diego area and San Diego County itself. I think my sense, again, I'm kind of new to the San Diego area and the politics as well, but the sense we've got from developers is that there have been different planning and kind of siting requirements at the county itself. But my hope is that as the county joins us, and there's some I know some synergies or whatever word you want to use, but there's opportunity to collaborate, I think, as well, to use as much, whether it's municipal or county-owned land, or to make sure that just all of our policies are aligned as much as possible to encourage renewable development, and to encourage it in the right places, where we're identified. So there's been talking of kind of renewable energy zones as well. I'm not sure where that left off, but those kinds of projects I think would be certainly we'd be hopeful to see move forward. And the more entities we have joining us, and Clean Energy Alliance to the north, I'd love to see more kind of more streamlined process for sure.
Yeah, thank you. That's encouraging.
Great. Yeah, thank you as well.
I like that renewable energy zone. Might want to talk with you offline about that. That sparked something in me. I don't know what it sparked, but it sparked something.
I like it.
Yeah.
Happy to chat.
Okay. Any more questions from the public? Okay. Well, do you have anything else, Byron?
Yeah, nothing more on this item, but we've got another item that I think I teased, and I believe Christina teased as well.
Okay, so that's item number 9. Are there any comments from the public, Sebastian?
Yes, Chair.
Oh Lord, it's lighting up like a Christmas tree.
'Tis the season.
Let me start my clock. So, Laura Saldana, you'll have 3 minutes, or actually, just want to clarify the process. Byron or Chair, do you want Byron to give the overview of the information and then take public comments? Or do you wish to start with public comment now?
Say that one more time.
Um,
Do I want Byron to give an overview of the project and then start public comment?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, that makes sense. I don't know if that's legal, but that makes sense.
I'll just hop in and say the City of San Diego, they'll give a presentation of the item, followed by public comment, followed
All
by.
right. Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, great. Thanks. Happy to appear here, 2 items back to back. And what we have here is a I guess briefing to you all, and overview of a power purchase agreement that we've been working on for quite a while here, with Pattern Energy, the developer, and the counterparty itself. The project is Duran Mesa Wind. So I think we can go to the next slide, please, Sebastian. So I touched on them briefly, I think, before, to give a little bit of background here on related to the project. We have renewable portfolio standard requirements. Again, that's RPS requirements. They stipulate, obviously, that we have a certain amount of renewable energy contracted each year and delivered each year. I mentioned before, we meet that, but we don't really plan around it, because our targets of 50% or more are exceed the state targets in the 30s right now, so not really too much of a concern for us. But we do need to be mindful of the 65% obligation to have 65% of our renewable energy sourced from contracts that are 10 years in length. And so that kicked off just this year. So it's been, the requirement was much lower prior to 2021. So here we are in the first compliance period of 2021, and again, have that requirement on us. A little bit of context, it's unfortunate that in some ways that new organizations also have to meet this requirement from year 1, right? Because it usually takes a couple of years to sign a contract, negotiate a contract, sign a contract, and then have a developer build a new contract, right? And the intent of the requirement really was to stimulate new additional resources, right, in the state. So, unfortunately, here we are in 2021. If we get started right from day 1, really is tough to contract for facilities that are online before 2023 or 2024. And I think we've seen that with a few other projects. The 3 previous long-term PPAs that our board has approved and that we've entered into are all for online dates in 2023, kind of middle of 2023. So, here we are still needing, to have 65% over that 4-year term, 2021 to 2024, delivered under long-term contracts. Next slide, please. So again, overview here on our long-term RFO. It's been quite a drawn-out process, admittedly, and I think with the organization growing, again, I kind of joined the process halfway through, as we've had some other obviously staff join us as well, and kind of had to carry the baton along. But just as a refresher, we launched our first long-term RFO, request for offers for long-term renewable energy deliveries, in June of last year. We shortlisted counterparties in August of last year, and then negotiated. Again, this is where negotiations took different shapes, and we're kind of the baton handed off at different times from September to March of this year, with all the shortlisted respondents. So that brings us to April and May of this year in board meetings, and we had 3 PPAs approved to be online in 2023. That's with the Vikings Energy Farm, IP Oberon, and then JVR Energy Park. So you're probably familiar with those 3 projects. There were a couple other projects that were also shortlisted during that time, and now that we've maintained negotiations, again, the shortlist is, ideally we sign all those deals if we're able to, but we can't always sign all shortlisted deals because it's subject to agreeing to mutually beneficial or mutually agreeable terms with the developer. So we have 1 more now that we'll be bringing to the board next week for review, and again, that's this project that we've been negotiating with the whole time. There's been again some turnover, well, not turnover, but passing of batons, I'll say, on our side, and then turnover as well on the pattern side as well. So we had to kind of pause negotiations for a little bit and restart a couple times, but we're here now, and again have a good contract in front of us that we're excited to move forward with. And again, we plan to do that here next week. Next slide, please. So just a summary here. I think, unless there are any surprises, I think this will be kind of round out procurement from our long-term RFO from last year. The 3 projects I mentioned before here are the Vikings Energy Farm, JVR Energy Park, and IP Oberon, again, which are all Southern California solar, right, trying to be as local as possible. The 5th project here that we're discussing and taking to the board is with Pattern Energy. It's Duran Mesa Wind. It's a 50 megawatt wind facility, and it is in New Mexico. So Pattern is developing a whole lot of wind in New Mexico region. I'll get into some of the reasons why, but they're developing both the wind facilities and transmission lines to deliver it to kind of the broader Western interconnection grid, so that it can be delivered to California as well. So this is the high level summaries here. Again, it's a 10-year contract, but what differentiates, again, is that it's expected to be online in early next year. And so we're pretty excited about that, to have new resources being built, but to be able to get a share of the output, to have it online here, in very short order. And especially as we look to meet our compliance targets, requirements for long-term deliveries. Next slide, please. Quick overview of Pattern Energy Group. They've been around for a while. They were established in 2009. They're headquartered in San Francisco, but they really have done a whole lot of development and own and operate as well. A lot of renewable energy and energy storage and transmission facilities. You can see they've got 30 operational projects, so some of them pretty big, totaling over 4 gigawatts of power in the U.S., Mexico, Canada, and also in Japan. They're owned as well by a pension group and private equity, the Riverstone Holdings Group. I think some early Pattern execs, I think, also have ownership stakes. And the photo here actually is from the Western Spirit Wind project, one of the, which is the broader group of which our project is one of them. Next slide, please. So Duran Mesa itself, the map here kind of shows where it is within the New Mexico region, but again, the transmission lines and then all of these wind facilities being developed to interconnect into the broader Western interconnection. Our share is 50 megawatts of 105 megawatt Duran Mesa project. Duran Mesa, if I believe correctly, is the red red zone there on the map. And of the total project, the Western Sky Wind is over a gigawatt of wind in New Mexico region. Again, there are a number of reasons for that. The wind resource in New Mexico is actually it's very strong. It's very known for its wind resource region, and also in a lot of ways, it's kind of complementary, and provides nice diversity in our portfolio, not only to the solar energy generation shape in general that wind does, but also to have wind in a different resource area from just the general California resource mix makes a lot of sense as well. So that as we're not just I guess beholden to the sun shining in California and the wind blowing necessarily in California, we can kind of broaden our portfolio outside to other areas as well. So the location itself is in Torrance County, New Mexico. The expected online date contractually is expected to be online by the end of this year, but there's always the expectation there's some wiggle room or allowance for certain delays. But expected to be online either by the end of this year or into early next year. We're expecting about 180 gigawatt hours a year of wind generation, which is enough to power about 36,000 homes, typical San Diego homes. And broadly speaking, it's about 2% of our energy requirements. Next slide, please. And overall, the contract itself is 10 years. There are kind of standard guarantees here for 75% of annual deliveries to be made. Otherwise, we're made whole. The energy price is fixed for the term with no escalation, and it's a pretty competitive price that will provide value to our customers as well. No collateral obligations for us to post collateral to secure the deal. But there is developer or seller collateral as well in case the project doesn't come online or in case it fails. Again, we'll be holding either cash or LC to make sure that we're made whole. And I think in addition to the kind of the portfolio diversity I mentioned earlier, having a broad portfolio of not only wind and solar projects, but also wind from various resources. One of the I think really compelling reasons here that we were considering, frankly, a project that is again, out of region and out of state, is because it's so close to COD. So development risk is low. The project is about to come online, and will be online in 2022. So it can help us meet again those long-term contracting requirements that we have for the compliance period 4, which is 2021 through 2024. So I think, again, it provides value to diversity to our portfolio. It's a small slice, to be honest, of everything we're going to be doing, but also really helps us achieve the regulatory requirements of long-term contracts that we have here in the next couple of years. So that's my overview. Happy to take comments from the public and from your committee and answer any questions.
I'm going in order as I see it. So first is Lori Saldana.
Ready? Lori Saldana, you will have 3 minutes. You've been unmuted.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. As someone who was an original co-author of AB 32, I've been a longtime proponent of clean energy. But I've also been a long-term proponent of locally generated energy. And this is concerning that this project is going through in New Mexico, almost 1,000 miles away. I'm not sure what the community benefits are going to be for people here in San Diego. This is requiring a huge high energy transmission lines, which are a concern because they can be dangerous. They can lead to some environmental problems like wildfires. And I'm also concerned that this is the first information provided to the public. Again, I'm looking through the website trying to understand how this information is provided, but generally you give an agenda packet to the public 72 hours before you're doing your presentation in a meeting. And this is the first time I've had a chance to look over these details about this particular energy project. And I suspect there are going to be other people voicing similar concerns. So if the committee is expected to take some action on this today, I just would again express a concern that this is a lot of information, does not stick to our goals of locally generated power, and doesn't seem to be supporting much in the way of local employment. Knowing you're up against these timelines, as you explained at the beginning of the presentation, I understand why you're having to go to this extent. But can there be any commitments going forward that you're going to provide people with more advanced notice to help us be prepared to do some research and comment on these with perhaps some alternatives in future meetings? Thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
Thank you, Lori. 1 second. Okay, Christina, you have been unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Sebastian. Appreciate it. You know, I agree with Lori on some of those talking points that she mentioned regarding, you know, the procurement of local renewable energy, and then, you know, how will that work with the community benefits here in San Diego. But I also emailed and verbally stated to Bill and Cody, as soon as I found out about, you know, the possibility of 50 megawatts of wind in a whole nother state. And, you know, like I said, we want to make sure that it's known that we oppose this, and that, you know, SDCP's core mission is to provide 100% clean, renewable energy locally. And this is to ensure that we're creating and building new renewable energy here locally, producing more work for local workers. And that's part of why CCAs were created, is to create new renewable energy for local workers in that specific area. And it's going against it. And, you know, this is so early in the game. You know, you say, oh, it's only 50 megawatts, or, oh, it's just a small piece, and it's just 10 days or 10 years. But who's to say that's not going to happen again? You know, so if we let it happen now, then you guys are going to think that it's okay to happen more. And I understand that you need to fulfill the renewable energy that you need to give to customers. I just hope that, you know, you guys can possibly find something else. You know, we just really hope that that happens. We need to create more work here in Southern California to ensure that the community benefits these renewable energy projects. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Now I'll go to the, well, there's 2 more. Somebody else has their hand up? Bill
yes.
Powers. Uh-oh, Bill Powers.
Okay. Bill, you've been unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Bill Powers, and first off, I want to recognize that Byron came in late in this process, so I understand that. And I'm not stalking you, Byron, even though we talked yesterday. And that I want to go back to the RFP that this came out of. And that's a short and sweet RFP, but it's not bad. And on page 2, it says top locational preference will be given to projects proposed in the JPA entities themselves, and it goes back from there. And I want to echo what Lori said earlier, that building a project in New Mexico is really the polar opposite of that, not only of that locational preference stated in the RFP, but of what those of us that fought for CCE in San Diego were all about, which is local projects. And since I got limited time, I do want to get to a core issue that I discussed with Byron yesterday and that we're pursuing in a Public Records Act request. We really jumped into this whole process over the Hukumba JDR solar project and its impact on Hukumba Hot Springs. Don't want to see that happen again, but getting down to compliance period 4 and the need for this project to fulfill the 65% long-term contract procurement requirement. I disagree. I've been an expert witness in the PCIA proceeding. Phase 2 is about allocation of IOUs long-term contracts to other LSEs like San Diego Community Power. Based on my calculations, the transfer of those long-term contract attributes is sufficient to cover the compliance period 4. We're still working that out, but I would really urge the Community Advisory Committee to vote not to support this project. Too many loose ends, polar opposite of what this was, CCE was set up to do. Final pitch, I put together a local solar report in 2020, presented it to the Community Advisory Committee, I think in June of 2020, talked to Joe Mosca about it. There's a way to do this locally, large scale, hundreds of megawatts, prices that can meet or beat these utility scale projects. So we should be talking about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And thankfully, we don't have to take an action on this item. We just receive a briefing and provide comment. So with that, I don't see any more hands raised from the public, but I do see committee members. And I'll go in order again. David Harris.
Thanks, Chair Price. I just wanted to ask Byron about the diversity of resources and how important that is to SDCP and its nascent stage of development.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, David. And certainly, portfolio diversity is one form of risk management for us, right? I think it's, we try to reduce risk in a number of ways, but, it's not all your eggs in one basket, right? It's probably the easiest way to sum it up, right? If we're all solar in one area, if we're all wind in one area or one region, whether it's whether it's a stormy summer or whatever, right, or a cloudy period, can have impacts over a day, a week, or a year, right? Same thing, to be honest, we're seeing with supply chains right now as well. It kind of applies to that, right? If you're all solar from one either one developer or one manufacturer, and your panels might be excuse me in the Port of Long Beach, right, for 6 months, right? And so there's just in everything we do, diversity makes a lot of sense. So try to, and I fully appreciate the comments made by public. I wholeheartly agree that we are here to supply as much local renewable energy as possible, and we will do so. This project won't limit us or preclude any additional, local energy deliveries, right? I think I want to be really clear about that as well. It's not this or local, it really is this and our portfolio is going to be big and broad and diverse, and focus wherever we can on local energy. But again, diversity is a big part of that. So appreciate the question, David.
Thanks.
Matthew.
Thank you. So I'll start off by saying I appreciate all the comments made by the public. I throw Bill Powers' report at anyone that asks me about local clean energy and the need for local build out and climate resiliency. It's a standard. And I also know the need for good job standards. So I appreciate those comments, and I look forward to future projects that can elevate and be exemplified for that. I also understand that we're in a bit of a precarious position of having to meet regulatory requirements for long-term contracts that are cost effective, and the dearth of local projects that can be developed quickly enough to meet those requirements in a timely manner. We can't really rely on SDG&E to hand off their resources. They've been very difficult in partnering with us on that front. So since SDCP is in its startup phase, which is a very dangerous period for the organization, I might add, given the vulnerabilities, we will need to hold tight and move forward with what we need to have in place, where we can then start to make real investments in local distributed energy resources, which we know are the most climate resilient and can be the most cost effective. But we need to develop them at scale locally. So I do support this contract begrudgingly. I also comment that, like the previous item, I hope that staff conducts some research on the impacts to the local community and see what conversations there have been there for community benefits. I also want us to prioritize high job standards that can create good union jobs with equitable access to working class communities of color. That is imperative, and communities of concern. And I'm looking forward to developing, thank you for the appointment committee, working with the hiring firm so we can get the community power plant up and running and elevating the things that we want to prioritize, which is local rooftop solar and storage, microgrids, programs like on-bill financing, other fun things that we need, again, to reach a truly local 100% clean energy program. So those are my comments on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. David, your hand is still up. Do you want to speak again? Or, okay. Does anybody else have any comments?
I'll comment. I want to thank Lori, Christina, and Bill for their comments. I too was hoping San Diego Community Power would have more local projects. I do understand it sounds like we're on a short timeline and this is going to get approved, but I have provided staff a recommendation in the future. I think it's great that we are seeing this project today. That was a request we had made and was updated into our work plan. I am recommending that they could bring it to us similarly to what Lori was saying, maybe first to us and the board as an info item, and having a couple opportunities for the public to weigh in where we can hear if there are concerns in the community where it's being built, and just allow another platform for public to weigh in.
Thank you. Matthew, your hand is still up. You have another comment?
I actually had a follow-up question for Byron. I was wondering, is there any way that SDCP, I know we're growing and expanding and all that stuff, is there any way that SDCP could prioritize hiring someone that could be focused on local procurement? Because I think that would be very helpful to have a point person. Obviously, you're doing, in my opinion, God's work, getting everything set. But to have someone that could be a local point person, hopefully who's local also, who can sift through these and join us in conversations and engage with the community, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, appreciate the comment. We appreciate all the comments. Well, I appreciate the question too. Yeah, I think that's in our hiring plan squarely. There's a lot of work we want to be doing directly in the community. It's no secret, right, that those kind of projects, innovative projects and more boots on the ground projects take a little more work as well, right? So we're very well aware of that. Between all the local investments I think we want to be making, and Nelson's up next or coming up later with our feed-in tariff program as well, right? Between that, the community power plan, all the local programs we have, and kind of the work we can do, I think, to stimulate local procurement and local projects. That's definitely in our plan. And I've been making my pitch, and I think we'll be there before long to have kind of local procurement people as well. We're a team of 12 or 13 right now, I think. 3 of them on the power team. We're going to be growing significantly, and I share that, I guess, priority, Matthew, and we'll look to add someone as soon as we can. And I'll make sure my executive team hears your feedback as well, because it's yeah, we're in agreement.
Thank you. So I believe we're done with this item. We've received the briefing and we provided comment. So thank you very much, Byron.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you all. Appreciate the time, and appreciate the opportunity to share with you all. And
let's talk offline about that thing I said we need to talk about.
Yep. My pleasure.
Whatever that. I don't forgot what it was now, but
I'll follow up, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 10. Are there any community comments? Comments from the community on item number 10, discuss and provide recommendation to the board approval of the updates to the feed-in tariff program and delegation of authority to the CEO to execute and amend feed-in tariff PPAs. Are there any comments from the?
Excuse me, Chair Price. If I may recommend that we entertain staff's presentation, and after the presentation, we hear public comments.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Thanks, Sebastian.
You're welcome. And for this one, it will be Nelson. So Nelson, please take it away.
Hello again. So thank you for the time. I know I stand, my item is the last one. I stand between you and freedom for the rest of the day. So I will try and be as fast as possible. But this is an important item, especially after the conversation we just had about local procurement and local resources. So Sebastian, if you want to go to the next slide. So I want to start with a bit of history just so we can level set. So about a year ago now, still this year, but in January of this year, the board adopted a feed-in tariff schedule application and an update to the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy. I just outlined here what that update to the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy is, but essentially it requires that contractors or subcontractors performing work on any of our feed-in tariff projects, they pay at least a prevailing rate, a prevailing wage. And the policy encourages contractors and subcontractors for projects to our feed-in tariff to utilize local businesses, local apprenticeship programs, fair compensation practices, and proper assignment of work and crafts that traditionally perform the work. So what the schedule, when the board adopted this schedule and application, what they established a standard offer feed-in tariff program, which is as follows. Next slide. So the program as it exists right now, and I will note, we have not currently launched the program, so we are not taking any applications, partly because of lack of resources from staff to get the program underway when the board adopted this in January. And part of it is because we wanted to come back and update it for you all. But the way that the program stands right now is that there is a total program capacity of 3 megawatts. There's a base price of $80 per megawatt hour, flat rate. We do include 5 additional bonus incentives to that base price. And those are applicable for the first 5 years. So if the project is being developed by a local business, we add an additional $2.50 to the base price. If it's being developed on a previously developed site, and that's an additional $2.50. And if it's sited within a community concern, it's an additional $2.50. It is possible for a project to meet all 3 of those bonus incentives, and in that case, it would get an additional $7.50 on top of the base price for the first 5 years. All project sizes must be limited and must be smaller than 1 megawatt alternating current. Must be an eligible resource as defined by the Energy Commission as a renewable portfolio standard. And right now, the term of the PPA is for 20 years, and all projects must be interconnected through the SDG&E distribution system. Next slide. So what we are coming before you now, seeking your recommendation for the board to approve is a assortment of updates. The goal of these updates is to incentivize delivery of energy during the hours when system carbon and carbon emissions and market prices are at its highest. We're seeking to replace generation from peaking power plants, gas power plants, to further reduce emissions. That's one of our goals. We want to avoid this program being used as justification or cause for utility scale renewable energy to be curtailed during the middle of the day, since we're seeing a lot of renewable energy during that time and peaks are shifting to later and later in the day. And we want to ensure that any local project that is viable, that is ready to go, has the opportunity to apply for the project, because the program is on a first come, first served basis. So with that, I'll walk through some of the proposed updates. Next slide. So the first update that we are seeking is to increase the program capacity limit to 6 megawatts from the current 3. And that is in recognition of a couple of things. One, we have 2 new members. So we want to make sure that the capacity size recognizes that our load has also grown and our need for energy has also grown as well. And that is also in recognition that we are now we have a larger team that is able to assess the financial implications of these programs and is comfortable with increasing that capacity limit size. The second thing that we're asking in terms of proposed updates is to switch from a flat base rate to one where we're calling time of delivery or TOD rates. So you heard of time of use rates. So now we want to do time of delivery rates. And this is really to incentivize the delivery of energy during the peak hours when I said carbon emissions are the highest and prices are the highest. And so with that, Sebastian, if you click ahead, what we are proposing is to set 2 time of delivery rates. One which we're calling premium hours, which would happen between 7 p.m. and midnight or 12 a.m. And we would, for energy delivered during that period of time, SDCP would be paying $120 per megawatt hour. All other hours, which we're calling the standard hours, anything outside of that peak period, that premium period, would be paid at $60 a megawatt hour. Next slide. An additional thing that we wanted to propose as an update to the program, and this is in recognition of the experience that we've had with other CCAs playing in the feed-in tariff program, is requiring a reservation security deposit that is due at the time that the application comes in. The reservation security deposit would be of $5 per kilowatt of the proposed generator size. And this is really to help protect the queue from applications from projects that are not viable. So as opposed to having a rush of applications come in from projects that are ultimately not going to be completed, and ensure that projects that are ready to go can come in and get considered for a PPA, we're adding an additional reservation security deposit as a way to tell developers, like, you're serious about applying and developing this project. The security deposit is returned to the applicant once commercial operation is achieved. And if it's not achieved, if the commercial operation does not happen, we retain the security deposit in full. The second deposit that we're proposing as well, the second update in terms of a security deposit, next slide, Sebastian, is a development security deposit. So this would be an additional deposit of $5 per kilowatt of the proposed generator size that is due when we execute the PPA. So this is a way for us to ensure that the developer follows through with their promise, with their contract promise to develop the project and achieve commercial operation as expected. Again, this deposit is returned to the applicant once commercial operation is achieved. And if they don't, we retain it. So it's a way for us to protect ourselves. And then lastly, the last deposit that we're seeking, next slide, is a performance security deposit. And essentially what this is a $10 per kilowatt of proposed generator system size that is due when the project starts operating, when it reaches commercial operation. This ensures that we don't get put in a situation where a developer goes through this extensive process of permitting, interconnection, et cetera, and then abandons the project and doesn't deliver on the product that they were contracted to deliver. So it's a way for us to protect ourselves a little bit, protect our customers, and ensure that the product ultimately comes to us. We will hold the performance security deposit for the entire length of the PPA, for the entire term of the PPA. And once that term is complete, we will then return it to the applicant. If they don't deliver on their promises, then we get to keep the security deposit. Next slide. So the last piece that we are asking in terms of a proposed update is delegating authority for the board to delegate authority to the interim CEO or their designee if needed to execute and amend a standard power purchase agreement. So we have developed and it's in legal review right now, a standard feed and tariff project, and that will be standard across all projects that come in. So there's an option for the PPA to be either a 10, 15, or 20-year term. And as it was noted, it's standard pricing across all projects. There are collateral requirements, indemnity requirements, insurance requirements, general conditions of the contract that are standard throughout. And the terms of the PPA will be non-negotiable with the applicant or the seller. So unlike what Byron mentioned earlier in terms of a bilateral negotiation, this is a very standard and dry contract that will be publicly available on our website. So we will create a web page that will host all of these documents, including the application. The reason we are seeking the delegation to amend the power purchase agreements as well as execute them is in recognition of the supply chain issues that we're seeing, and also in recognition that interconnection and permitting do take a while. So while a project may have specific time frame for when they're developing that is their best estimate, we never know what's going to happen in terms of whether the solar panels are going to sit at the Port of Long Beach for 6 months, as Byron mentioned earlier, or if there's some kind of event that requires all of the attention of the permitting agency. And I speak from experience of having worked in Sonoma where there was a large fire. The reconstruction of all those homes took precedent over any new projects. So that would be the only way we would amend the PPA. So we would only be amending to either extend the commercial operation, so long as they show that the project has been moving along, that they've been doing all their due diligence to make sure that they achieve their original commercial operation date. That will all be, any sort of execution or amendment would all go through legal counsel first to ensure that everything is in order before the CEO executes or amends the PPA. And so with that, if we go to the next slide, the last slide, is the requested committee action, which is to recommend to the board that they approve our proposed updates to the feed and tariff program and delegate authority to the CEO or their designee to execute and amend the contracts.
You done, dude?
Yes.
Thank you. Any comments from the, yes, there are. Comments from the community? Christina?
1 second, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Christina, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair Price. I appreciate it. Christina Marquez, IBW 569. Thank you so much for the presentation. This is great. There was one thing, and maybe it's something I missed previously, going back under the history slide for inclusive and sustainable workforce policy required that. So I like the first bullet point. That's great. Second bullet point would make us super duper excited and happy if it said required instead of encouraged. And then somewhere add in there local workers, local journeymen, or local something. It does say local apprenticeship programs. It does say local businesses, but I don't see anything there that requires local workers other than using local apprenticeship programs. So required, and add in there local workers or something of the sorts in that bullet point would make us very, very, very happy. But this is one of the reasons why we backed SDCP, because you guys had a great inclusive and sustainable workforce policy. So we thank you for that. And I hope that maybe you guys would possibly be able to take that recommendation in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lori, Saldana? Oh, Sebastian's supposed to be saying that. Huh?
Oh, no, you're fine, Chair. I just need to unmute her. So Lori, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes. And, the nice thing about being a relatively new organization is you are creating the framework and still making updates to these programs. And as Christina mentioned, some of what you have in your program is clearly important in terms of prevailing wage, in terms of making sure that it's local, that we're supporting local apprenticeship programs. In addition to that, I want to encourage this committee to look at diversity in hiring and gender equity in hiring. There is a very good resource for that. A local organization did an evaluation of apprenticeship programs in San Diego County. And on a personal level, I was a union carpenter in another life before I went on to get my graduate degree and went into a different career path. And so I know how few women are actively employed in these types of jobs. And this is something where San Diego Community Power could make a real difference if you, make a recommendation as a committee to, it's kind of like racism. It's not enough to be against it. You have to be anti-racist to move the line forward and make sure that people who have been historically disenfranchised from participation in all levels of the economy are brought in. And if you look at the analysis, I can forward this to you. Women make up a very small percentage, specifically in electricians. Only 2% of electricians are women, as of a report from a few years ago. And the vast majority are, 97% are men, and 64% of those are white. And so you have a very non-diverse workforce doing a lot of these local projects. And that probably is the same for projects in other areas as well. So I support the changes that are being proposed today. And I just wanted to bring to your attention that there is additional work that needs to be done as we build a new form of energy for our community. You have real power in creating a new type of workforce and make it more equitable, more diverse, and make sure that these good paying jobs are available to a broader range of residents in throughout San Diego County. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage other agencies all the time to do that. But since you're just getting started, I want to make sure you get started on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody from the committee have any questions or comments? David Harris.
Yes, I have a couple comments and then I had 3 questions for Nelson. First comment is in regards to Christina's public comment. I went back and watched the board meeting from last January when the original presentation on the feed-in tariff program was made to the board and the discussion around it. And they spent over an hour discussing the wording for the workforce policy. And they very carefully worded it. And the board reached consensus on the wording that was presented here. So, I understand Christina's point, but I think that the board of directors has given sufficient consideration to the workforce and inclusion policy. Second comment was that when this program was first presented, one of the concerns was the fact that in its nascent stage, SDCP has to be very concerned and give utmost attention to program finances, and that the early stage finances should be the priority over a program such as feed-in tariff, or at least there should be a weighing of what this program will cost and whether we build up sufficient resources to support what is now being proposed as a 6 megawatt program. So with that, I just wanted to ask a couple questions of Nelson, which I provided to him in advance so that he would have time to think about this. But are you ready, Nelson?
Yes, let's do that.
Oh, okay. So with the variable pricing, what you call the time of delivery, right? Is this designed to incentivize wind, geothermal, biodiesel, and biomass projects over solar panels? Or would solar panels with battery storage also be able to meet that requirement for the peak energy premium? Or both?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And our rationale for the time of delivery pricing really is to encourage deliveries during that peak period, during those peak periods where peaker plants are coming online. So it's not, we don't have a particular resource in mind in terms of like trying to incentivize one over the other. It's more of just, we are seeing these spikes in energy prices during this time. We know that plants are coming online during this time. And instead of just having a program that every other CCA has done, we wanted to make it exciting and innovative and incentivize delivery during those times.
Great, thank you for that answer.
And if I may, what I wanted to address the second point of your question in terms of whether solar paired with battery is eligible for that, and 100%. That's we have that in mind as well in terms of like, if we get battery storage paired with the solar panel project, like that's perfect. You know, that would be delivering renewable energy that was charged in the middle of the day to that battery during those peak period of time. So yes, 100% eligible.
Okay, second question, and actually my last question, can you provide an annual estimate of the cost premium that would be paid under this program when fully subscribed at the 6 megawatt cap, assuming a variable pricing for 3 megawatts at the $60 level and 3 megawatts at the $120 level? Do we have a way of knowing on an annual basis what the premium would be, cost premium would be for that amount?
Yeah, I will see if Byron is able to answer that question. I see that he's on mute, but.
Yeah, happy to speak to that. I think it's a good question and something that we're certainly very mindful of. I think, David, your comment earlier about weighing the, obviously the local benefits, local renewable energy and all of that against program finances is kind of the crux of our mission here, right? Is to make sure that we incentivize as much local development as possible, but you need to do so sustainably, one, environmentally, but also organizationally. So I don't have hard to provide a specific number for you, but as far as the cost premium, you know, it depends kind of what you want to compare it to, but you know, the $60 to $120 range, you know, we try to think about public data. There's probably, you know, pretty good public data around, you know, wholesale, large scale solar PPAs, right? Which are, it's not apples to apples, but if that's our alternative, you know, they might be in the $30 range. So, you know, solar plus storage might be a little more expensive, obviously, but probably a good ballpark to start with. So, you know, I think we see this as a worthwhile investment and kind of a, you know, a cost that we're willing to incur for the purpose of, you know, developing local renewable and distributed resources that we want. So I think that's there is some obviously, you know, incremental cost, but on the scale of a 6 megawatt program on the full scale of SDCP, I think it's one that we you know, have evaluated and decided that we can support. And I can follow up with you later with a kind of a more thorough or specific answer if you'd like.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just wanted to say, I like the fact that the peak hours are being incentivized. But I am also concerned that the timing of this program is appropriate for the growth of SDCP, and so the financial considerations should be weighed in. Thanks.
And before, Mr. Chair, I wanted to add an additional layer to that. So having having had experience managing these contracts on this program and the last CCA that I worked for, it does take a number of years for us to actually even start paying developers for the energy being delivered. So I think we're in a, I don't want to speak for Byron, but I think from a programmatic perspective, I think we're in a good spot to open this program early next year, start receiving applications, because it will take a couple of years just to get the projects through the permitting and interconnection phase before they get to the final construction phase, which will then, it'll take a couple of years before we're actually paying out. And so by that point, we'll have a number of fiscal years under our belt, and we'll have a better idea as to our financial future in that point.
Thank you.
Matthew, are you done? Were you done, David? Okay, thank you. Matthew?
Just a quick hypothetical question. What would happen if say a developer were to come in and pay a deposit, but then go out of business or just disappear?
We keep the deposit, right? Until
we would keep the deposit, and depending on the stage that they're in, if they're in the early development stage, then we would keep the deposit, and then that would open up that queue, that reservation amount for the next application to come in. So we could consider them. In terms of what would happen if they built the thing, developed it, all that kind of stuff, that's all laid out in our contract in terms of collateral damage. Byron will probably speak more to that experience, but I don't think we necessarily have ever seen that happen.
Thank you.
Well, like to Matt's point, hypothetically, if it does happen, would San Diego Community Power be in a position to buy the project and own it, just own it outright? Or is that even a possibility?
Byron here. I love the way you think, Chair. That's not necessarily in scope of the of the PPA as it is. What we have currently is, the development security and the performance security. So it's a little bit of skin in the game for the developer, obviously. So if they fall up short and we have to go replace the energy, or if we're damaged otherwise, we have some security there to make us whole, and I think more likely just to disincentivize anyone from not performing and not delivering as they say they will. I certainly like the way you think. If we did get into a hypothetical here where somebody were to build a project and abandon it, certainly I'd love to look at all options. It's not kind of it's not outlined in the PPA currently, but I think down the road, I certainly think we'd entertain whatever options we could to revitalize a otherwise functional facility.
Cool. No more comments from the public or the committee? Oh, well, David Harris, you have another question or concern or comment?
Just, are we going to be taking a vote on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Momentarily.
Okay, good. I just wanted to let everyone know I need to leave the meeting at 4. So.
Okay, so we're going to do it within 3 minutes is what you're trying to tell me, right?
If possible.
Okay. If there aren't any other comments from the public or the committee, I guess we can take a vote, Sebastian.
I'm going to need a vote in a second. Chair Price.
Also move.
Is there
I
a
second
second?
it.
Oh,
Okay. Gary Johns,
Yes.
Carolyn Schofield,
Yes,
Ed Lopez.
Yes, and I apologize. I have to hard break at 4:02.
Okay. Tom Summers,
Yes.
David Harris,
yes.
Matthew Vasilakis,
Aye.
Secretary Webb,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hammond,
Yes.
and Chair Price.
Yep,
All right, this motion passes. Thank you.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Uh-oh. What happened?
We're
to-
not done yet.
We're not done yet?
Almost. This is the last one.
Oh, here goes the agenda. The approval for the 2022 regular meeting schedule. This-
I'll take this one, Chair.
All right.
This is just a minor administrative motion, just to set the regular meeting schedule to continue the second Friday of the month at 1 p.m. For next year. Obviously, if there comes a time where COVID is no longer a threat and we can move in person, we can change the agenda. But this is just a minor administrative thing that staff needs for next year.
Okay, so would somebody, do you have a picture of what the schedule looks like, or would you like to explain the schedule? Is it the third Thursday or the first Friday, or what is it?
It is the second Friday of the month at
Okay.
1 p.m.
At what time?
At 1 p.m.
Okay, and I'm just saying this for clarity for the public.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to keep our meeting schedule the same next year, keeping it the second Friday of the month at 1 p.m.
I will second that motion.
And Tara, you're gonna be here at every meeting, right?
It's the plan.
And thank you. Just want to acknowledge if there's any members of the public who want to give public comment on this. Please raise your hands if you wish to do so. Okay. Lori, you have 3 minutes.
Very quickly, I know people need to leave. Is there a reason that this can't be done after traditional work hours so more people could participate in the evening? That would be my only suggestion, given if you want more community participation. Thank you.
I think Sebastian sorry for making my motion before you spoke, Lori. I didn't see a hand raised when I made it. I think we had done an extensive poll trying to get everyone's schedules, and this happened to be the only time, but I do hear you that certain hours might be better for some members of the public, but I do recall that even changing this meeting today, I have someone filling in for my meetings. It was very difficult to find a schedule, but I hear your feedback.
Sebastian?
Chair Price, just want to acknowledge Secretary Webb just raised her hand.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to piggyback on what Vice Chair Hammond said. I have, I'd have to sit and count them, probably 12 evening meetings a month. So it becomes quite difficult for me to arrange an evening meeting that might arrange with everyone else's schedule.
Okay. I think this might be my cue to call the vote. Gary Johns,
Yes.
Carolyn Schofield,
yes,
Tom Summers,
Yes.
Matthew Vasilakis,
Aye.
Secretary Webb,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hammond,
Yes.
and Chair Price.
Yep.
I would like to make a recommendation if in the future we have community surveys that we include asking when people can meet to see if it is something that we should reconsider changing in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
With that, we have two more items. Discussion of potential item agendas for Board of Directors. I think we have one item to go on there that we spoke about earlier, right?
We have the 3 elements that weren't included in, I guess, 2 elements that weren't included in the CEO specific item we had discussed. That was asking for a monthly update at the CAC for the CEO search, as well as asking them if they can let us know if a CAC member will be a part of the search. And then I believe the memo portion ended up getting into the final amendment, so it would just be those 2 items.
And are we asking them, are those informational, are we sending those as informational items, or do we want them to vote on those and make a decision?
Well, one is just providing us monthly updates. So I think the monthly updates is informational, but we had discussed having them vote, like let us either vote or just let us know, is a CAC member going to be part of it? They've said they like the idea, but nobody has officially approved it. So I would recommend that we request them to vote on it or make a decision.
I would humbly, just based on, you know, the short history we have with them, I would humbly suggest we ask them to vote on both of them, so that, you know, whatever their answer is documented, so we're not in some long drawn out process. That's just my humble opinion.
Well, you'll be doing the ask, so go for it.
All right.
And I do see Lori's hands raised.
Lori? Lori Saldana?
Yes, thanks. I was waiting to be unmuted. One reason I joined today is I realize we don't hear from you at our local city councils for all of the different agencies that are part of the community power agreement. We don't hear from you directly in a way that I'm familiar with. And this week, SDG&E came and gave a presentation to the San Diego City Council that was lacking in substance and detail, and in some cases was very inaccurate. And I worry that people don't know what the community power, what it means to the region. And so I wanted to ask if you could come up with some framework to be added to the city council agendas. Someone, either the advisory members who are appointees of these different cities and the county of San Diego, but somehow have a regular update provided to the public as part of their meetings.
Hello?
So people will know what.
Hey, how you
community power
doing?
is all about.
I'm in a meeting right now. Can you call me back like 4:30?
Chair Price, if you want to mute yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't know if he was talking to me or if I see he's on a call. So it just, again, as someone who has served in public office, we get a lot of information. The public gets a lot of information, but sometimes it's overwhelming what they hear. And I just think if you have a regular routine report that can be presented through the city councils and a presentation on what you're doing, it will help when you start rolling out early next year and people start seeing San Diego Community Power on their utility bills. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that idea, but I don't think we need to do that. I think, you know, and maybe that's why you brought it up here. Maybe we could suggest that to the board, that they could represent it at their individual municipalities, which seems like a good idea, because I agree with you. I talk to people all the time that have no idea or have never heard of San Diego Community Power. And I think, you know, from our leadership, and those are our elected leadership for these different municipalities, it might be a good idea for them to put on their docket, you know, once a month or once a week, an update on San Diego Community Power. That makes a lot of sense. In my humble opinion.
I agree with that.
I really like that.
This is Secretary Webb. We've had, I think Cody Hooven came to our IB council meeting once, and we've had someone else that came once, but it's been pretty sporadic, and I agree with that suggestion.
And so maybe, I don't know, whoever gives me notes could put that on the notes for me to remember to tell the people that.
That would be me, and I'll do it right now.
Thank you, ma'am. And with that, I believe we're at 13. Do any of the members have any announcements?
Yeah, Eddie, I had my hand up. I wanted to
Oh, I'm
echo
sorry.
Anna's comment there. I'm wondering if we as a committee, as a whole, could promulgate some procedure for getting someone, not necessarily us, but someone that can represent San Diego Community Power to each and every one of the city council meetings. And then also as a part of that, come back to the CAC and give a brief report of how it went or what was brought up, what was, or how it was met at each one of these city council meetings. I know myself, I've been waiting for some guidance on how to go about that. And of course, without any public meetings, it's been kind of a mysterious process to me.
You know, there was some talk of conversation in this general arena last week about getting the other people, they call alternates, more involved in this process, right? And I've spoken to a few alternates and they seem excited and really want to be a part of this. So maybe that may be a way to bring the alternates in and have them more engaged, is to see if they can report back to their different municipalities and then report back to us or something like that, right? Develop a process that would actually engage the alternates a little bit more and have them speak at their own city council meetings and bring that to the, and put that on the agenda. That might be a way to do that.
Eddie, the problem with that, or perhaps it's an advantage, but I don't, I see it as more of an obstacle, is that these alternates are city council members themselves, and maybe that makes it more difficult.
Well, I don't think it's more or less difficult. It's just the same amount of difficulty. It's just a different person.
Well, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, I had my hand raised and now I've jumped in. I'm speaking, but I'm in the same city as Tom. The issue with having a city council person on our city council bring this up is that people would look at it as a politicized a service rather than a community service. So that would be.
Who would you suggest brings it to your city council in Imperial Beach?
One of the SDCP staff, someone that pays a prize. I think that would be a neutral person. If it's myself, I would say I'm involved. I'm president of the Imperial Beach Democratic Club. That wouldn't fly. So Tom could, but I think staff from SDCP would be better. That'd be my recommendation.
Or if we go to one advisor committee, perhaps the alternate advisor might be more willing, available, time-wise to take this stuff to the city council meetings. We need to figure this out as we go forward, because we're going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I think, you know, the staff idea makes a lot of sense because of its non-political nature. Either it's, you know, one of us or our alternate, it could still be conceived as political in some way, shape, or form by somebody. So maybe we may need to bring this back to our next meeting and hash this out a little bit more at our next meeting before we take it to the board. How y'all feel about that?
I think that would be a good idea.
Okay. Sebastian, can you make sure that it gets on our next agenda?
I was going to suggest, what if you mention it to the board that we discussed it, and they might have ideas as well as to who might be appropriate, throwing that out there for your consideration.
I've got it written in the notes.
So there's no more committee member announcements? Uh-oh, Carolyn. Hey, Carolyn, how you doing?
I'm still on this, the old item. I was going to say the same
Uh-oh.
thing. It might be good to have it as an agenda item for our next meeting. And at that time, maybe we could share some of the communication things that we're doing already in our cities and just talk about ideas about different groups working together, because in Chula Vista, we work with the, whatever environmental commission the city has. We work with the city staff, the council, and also SDCP staff. But, we could discuss maybe a little bit of those frameworks and talk about, and also, of course, the board of directors. But I think it would be a really worthwhile discussion. But you would
To put this discussion on our next agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. As well as, to Tara's point, at least mention it to the board, because they may have some ideas or concerns also. So that makes sense. And, I'm almost hesitant to say this because I might be wrong, but I think it's a wrap.
Oh,
We're almost there.
See, I told you.
New member announcements.
No member announcements? So we really ain't doing nothing else but this, huh? Okay.
Oh, wait, I will announce tomorrow is Climate Action Campaign's Community Choice Energy Forum. So if folks are interested in attending, shoot me a note. Excited to have so many folks from SDCP and the community and the clean energy world coming together tomorrow from 9 to 1. It's a virtual event, so online. And thanks for folks who I know who are already attending and have been attending for years. Really appreciate the support. Help build up where we got today. So thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Matthew.
Anybody else? Y'all just a bunch of boring people like me. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Without any further ado, I say the meeting has been adjourned.
Adios.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Likewise.
Thank you all.
Eddie, who was that called?